Ridley Scott's Alien was released in summer 1979 and became seminal science fiction and horror. Acclaimed as a classic haunted house in space tale, it spawned an entire franchise and launched the careers of Scott and its lead, Sigourney Weaver. My name's John, and I'm here with Westy.
Hey, the food ain't that bad, baby.
And Matt.
We ain't out of here in 10 minutes. We won't need no rocket to fly through space.
On this podcast, no one can hear you scream, and all the right movies are bleeding acid to talk Alien. Hello and welcome to All the Right Movies, a podcast unclouded by conscience, remorse, or delusions of morality on classic and hit films. Today we've got a right old treat for you. We've covered Aliens already on a previous episode, and now we're going back to where it all began. Some huge opinions and laughs are in store as we bring you the full lowdown on Ridley Scott's Alien.
Lovely, yeah, of course. I don't know how many laughs they're going to be like, but we'll try.
We might find
one. It'll be hilarious, this one.
Before we wake from hypersleep, though, a message from the company. If you like what we do on this or regular podcasts and would like us to keep on keeping on, please help support us do that by becoming an All the Right Movies patron. Patrons also gain access to 3 bonus podcast episodes per month and access to our full archive of classic episodes like the one you're listening to now, and including Aliens as well. This archive's growing all the time, and right now there are 20-something further classic episodes in there. Yeah. Pretty good value, is it not?
Massively. Especially just to get Aliens as a double feature, it's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. So to find out more and sign up, please visit patreon.com/alltherightmovies. Back to Alien though. Right from the start, we knew this one was a cert we'd be covering at some point, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
So why do you want to talk about it, Westy?
But because we have to, don't we? It's not because we have to, it's because we need to. I think it's just one of them films, and coming out in 79, it just had such an impact on everyone who saw it. And I saw Aliens before I saw this. So for me, it was kind of like just going into like your older brother's room and like snooping around, and you shouldn't be there. And it was like it was like too much to take. It was just so slow, and it was just really painful, and it was just so atmospheric and just so visually striking, and it stayed with us ever since I saw it. I can still see it. I can still see them, the visor with the computer graphics over the top of it. I can still see the alien coming out of the darkness. I can still see all of those things that were impacted the very first time I saw it, and it had such an impact. That impact has not dropped in 40 years. I'm not like saying I saw it 40 years ago, but like
I'm giving your age away there.
Yeah, I know. I'm 85, but like when Cleopatra came out, it was huge. It was one of them films that really, really stuck with us, and I think it sticks with everyone when they say it. It's one of them unforgettable films, one of them unforgettable cinema experiences, and one that we absolutely have to talk about. Yeah,
well, like you, Westy, I saw Aliens before I saw Alien as well. I saw Aliens when I was about 11 or something, and it quickly became one of my favourite films, and it still is. And then I didn't see Alien until I was probably about 17, so haven't seen Alien so much. Alien had became this like almost mythical film in my head. You see headshots of the crew from Alien in the briefing scene at the start of Aliens, don't you? And Ripley tells the story of Alien, and I was always like, ooh, it's Alien, even though I didn't know what it was. And when I first watched Alien, I admit I was a bit disappointed with it. It's a very different beast to Aliens. Much more about tension, suspense and horror than wall-to-wall action. So I'm looking forward to exploring that. Also, this is the first time we've talked about Ridley Scott, one of the most acclaimed directors of the last 40-odd years. So it's good to finally visit one of his films. And the backstory of not just the movie, but the universe they created, the world building and H.R. Giger's alien design. I think all that's astonishing. And there's loads of interesting stuff to talk about there. It's seminal science fiction is Alien, and I'm really excited about this one.
Really is.
And Matt, why do you want to talk about Alien?
Well, you guys did such like a bang-up job on Aliens that we had to kind of close the circle on it really and get back to, like you said, where it all started. And like you guys, three in a row, I did see Aliens first. My dad let me watch it when I was a similar age to you, John. he filled me on the backstory before it started, just gave me a very kind of quick overview of who Ripley was and what had happened, just so I knew what was going on. And then also, probably about a year or two later, I found the novelization of Alien in the local library, and I got it out and I read that.
Right.
And it's actually, I think from memory, I read it a few times when I was younger, not read it for at least 20 odd years, but from memory, I think it's actually based on the shooting script, because there's things in the book that are only in the director's cut, like when Ripley finds Dallas cocooned and she kills him with the flamethrower. So in regards to the film, I did put off watching it for a while because I felt, well, I know exactly what happens in it. I know Ripley survives. I know what happens to everyone. I didn't feel a real need to get around to it, even though I knew it was massive and it had this reputation. And so when I did first watch it, in a way, I guess my expectations were lowered, but that was probably why I was so blown away by it, and I really was, because the novelization, it just doesn't put across how intense this film is. It doesn't put across how good it looks. It doesn't put across how good it sounds. It's iconic for a reason. So many other films and directors have tried to copy this since, practically scene for scene, character for character, and it's nothing else has come close to it, really.
No. That's the first person in the history of Alien to say, I read the book first.
It probably is, yeah.
Definitely is.
Such a nerdy on that, isn't it? But yeah, it is.
You're such an academic.
Let's read the book first.
Well, before we get into it, the production info on Alien, produced by Brandywine Productions, distributed by 20th Century Fox, and released on May the 25th, 1979. Alien was filmed at Shepperton Studios in London. Directed by Ridley Scott, produced by David Giler and Walter Hill, written by Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett, and the main cast: Sigourney Weaver, Tom Skerritt, Veronica Cartwright, Yaphet Kotto, Harry Dean Stanton, John Hurt, Ian Holm, and Balaji Badeo. So, shall we get stuck right into the movie?
Let's go.
Yep.
Excellent. Coming up then, we're talking the beginning of Alien. There's no dialogue for the first 6 minutes of the movie. How does that work?
It's just so slow, but it's slow because it's incredibly ominous and it's eerie, and I think Scott is doing that with this title sequence, because he's basically telling you this is what the rest of the film is going to be like. There's no big kind of Star Wars fanfare here. There's no title smashing the way on the screen. Everything is minimalist, everything is slow, and it's creepy, and it's designed to put you on edge, which it does.
I know the original idea of those titles was to have the title made up of flesh and bone, but Ridley Scott thought that was too gory, and what we see was actually designed by the legendary Saul Bass, though he's uncredited in the movie.
And then you're inside the Nostromo. It's Ron Cobb's amazing set design here. It's just absolutely fantastic. It's mesmerising. That's kind of how I want my house to look. Just if I could, let's get somebody to design my house, just like the Nostromo.
After the eerie opening to the movie, Ridley Scott's in no major rush to get things moving and takes his time over introducing us to the Nostromo crew waking up from hypersleep and eating in the mess hall. After that, though, it's all happening, and there's a couple of huge moments. We're obviously going to talk about the iconic chestburster scene, but first we're looking at the sequence on the planet LV-426, where a crew member is attacked and impregnated by a facehugger. How does that sound?
Awful. Not good for him.
Well, after the Nostromo supercomputer mother wakes the crew when they receive a distress call from an unknown source, Tom Skerritt's Captain Dallas, John Hurt's Kane, and Veronica Cartwright's Lambert don their spacesuits and head out to investigate. The sequence on LV-426 brings us mysterious spaceships, space jockeys, 130 alien eggs, and the inciting incident of the story when a facehugger attacks Kane. Takes a little while to get to the big moment, but when it does, it's massive, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the actual attack itself, it's just a jump scare, and in the wrong hands, a jump scare can be a really cheap tactic. It can be something that just makes you like turn off straight away. Oh, it's going to be one of those films, things just jumping out. But this one, it just works so well because it's all that build-up. It's how, from as soon as they set foot on the planet, it's just instantly hostile to them. And it's just screaming at them, get off, get back on your ship and go. Yeah. And then the build-up to it, though, it's brilliant because I think there's a lot of distraction going on, because you're thinking, who the hell is that massive guy in the chair? How was something exploded out of his chest? Why is there a big massive hole in the floor? And then you go down with Kane, and then you see the eggs and the fluids running upwards, which is really weird, and that just really freaks you out. Like, how on earth is that happening? And because you're looking at them and they're so fleshy and they're so organic and it's something you've just never seen before, I think it just really catches you off guard when it does leap out. That editing, it's so swift. It cuts so hard. You can barely take it in and then boom, you're out of there. And I just love how it's that slow pull back from the ship. And you're like, right, there you go, you're in.
Well, you fellas know I like my science fiction.
Do you?
And this whole sequence, just a little bit. And this whole sequence aboard the alien ship is top to bottom, top-notch science fiction movie making, as good as it gets. The design work from the alien ship to the spacesuits to the eggs to the facehugger is just exceptional. The production design, first aboard the Nostromo and then aboard the alien ship where we see the space jockey in the chamber full of eggs, is huge. No spaceship interiors have ever looked better for me.
No.
The writing and performances are top tier as well, but Ridley Scott's direction really, really stands out for me here. The tense, suspenseful tone he sets and then completely controls as Dallas, Kane and Lambert investigate the ship is pretty masterful, I think. I just find the whole thing fascinating. We see the exterior of the alien ship and we're like, what the hell's that? Then in the ship we come across the space jockey and we're like, what the hell's that? We're desperate to know what these things are, but it's not about that. Scott's building up to the money shot, and that facehugger is some money shot. We arrive in the chamber of eggs and over 130 alien eggs were created just for this sequence, which is ridiculous.
Wow. Yeah.
And the whole thing just looks magnificent. And Kane examining the egg up close, I mean, come on. Even now, 30 watches in, when that egg opens and Kane cautiously peers into it, I'm like, get out of there. Don't put your head over that thing. But at the same time, you don't blame him for wanting to know what it is because it's so fascinating. And the moment the facehugger strikes, the sound design's great. There's like a whip and a crack with its tail, and then the editing, like you mentioned, Matt, is just fantastic. We don't actually see this facehugger attack, but because it's so well done, it's sort of in my head, which is a sign of great directing, I think. It's just superb start to finish, and for me, the best sequence Ridley Scott's ever directed.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to be careful here because I could talk about this whole sequence for about 45 minutes, so I'm just going to have to either talk really fast or just get the bits sorted. But from seeing that ship silhouetted, from the matte paintings to the model work to the interiors that were just, hand painted by Geiger as well, it was all done by him, sprayed by him. This thing looks alive. How kind of sexually violent the whole design is as well. I mean, that whole ship just kind of looks like a spread pair of legs, and then you've got them openings which are obviously vaginal, but they do. Westy's theory number one. But then the way they get in is just obviously vaginal. And then when you see that space jockey, that crane shot, for me, it's just one of the best. It's one of the best things I've seen. It just kind of pans all the way up, and you just see the whole thing. But Geiger kind of hand painted all of it, and it was ruined by someone dropped a cigarette on it at the end of the shoot and burnt it down. Unbelievable.
What?
Yeah.
I'd be devastated.
Absolutely devastated. But it was like 26 feet, I think, when they built it. But like you guys have said, you've gone over that attack. But the thing that gets me is when they're shining that light through it and they see that movement. And it's like, there's movement. But do you know how they did that?
No.
They've got it on a platform, and Ridley Scott's inside of it, and they tried to prod it with sticks, and it just looked rubbish. So he's actually got a pair of marigolds on, painted flesh coloured. He's got like a cow's kidney, and he's just kind of flapping it. You know when you make like a shadow puppet on the wall, and you try to do a bird, and you lock your thumbs and you flap your hand. He's just basically doing that inside the egg, and that's Ridley Scott moving it. So he had control over all of it. He had like all these entrails, and he had all these bits and all the kind of white bits of fat that you get on the end. He dressed the whole of the egg. I mean, it's all from his mind. This whole film is Ridley Scott's film, which we'll go through. You've got that incredible shot where it pushes in, where you see them going into the ship, and then it's completely bookended by it coming out. That's a short film in itself. It's a horror film in itself.
Yeah, it is.
And then you bang onto the ship. It's just so beautifully done. I could just watch that over and over again. It's absolutely masterful.
Yeah, I mean, Westy mentioned it there about that blue light and where that came from, because it's such an iconic look for me, the lighting in that chamber, where it comes from. That actually came from The Who, of all people, because when Scott was filming this sequence, The Who were next door because they had a big stage show coming up, so they were testing lasers. Scott just saw it, loved it, immediately as an artist thought, I can use that, and then asked Roger Daltrey if he could. So that's where that light comes from.
Amazing.
Wow.
Yep.
I've never been so thankful for Roger Daltrey in my life.
Best thing The Who ever did.
They should have called the planet LV515 in tribute.
I don't get it.
I don't get it.
Oh, 515 is a song by The Who.
Oh, I don't like The Who. I mean, I love them now. I mentioned the bit about the spacesuits there, but it was an absolute nightmare on the set. It was like 38 degrees, and the cast kept saying, like, this is really uncomfortable, and they regularly pass out, and a nurse had to be on hand at all times. But that shot, I said, as the camera pans back, the guys in the suits are Ridley Scott's and Derek Van Lint's children, so you can kind of see them moving like kids would. And once they were put in the suit, they were like, this is really uncomfortable, and then they started passing out. So they went, right, we've got to make modifications to this costume because the kids are uncomfortable. It doesn't matter about the actors as long as the kids are comfortable.
The kids aren't all right in this case. You get that one, surely.
That's a better one. Keep that
one in. Well done.
So, like, we've talked about the space jockey already, that huge alien skeleton, obviously, when they get into that ship. And obviously, since this film, Scott has addressed the origins of it in his two alien prequels. But before they came along, there was another explanation. Have you heard what this was?
No, go for it.
Well, it comes from Ron Korb, who Westy mentioned he's one of the concept artists on the film, and he says, a cataclysm caused the adult aliens to die, leaving the eggs dormant in the chamber. Years later, the space jockey race investigate the planet, find the egg chamber, and are fascinated by it. One of them gets face-hugged. The alien bursts from his chest and goes on a killing rampage. The alien is shot and killed, and its acidic blood burns through the hull, leaving the space jockey stranded on the planet. So they send out a distress call, and that's one that's picked up years later by the Nostromo. But by this point, the jockeys have all starved to death.
Wow.
Oh.
The space jockey actually gets explained, I think, in a far worse way in Prometheus.
Oh, much worse. Yeah.
I'm sticking with your explanation there, Matt.
Yeah.
Also, I know that Fox very nearly said no to them building that space jockey set because it was so huge and only being used for one scene. And it was again Ron Korb who convinced them to keep it. He called it our Cecil B. DeMille shot, meaning a moment that makes the movie look really expensive and not like a B movie like the Fiat would. I mean, he's right. That set alone gives the film an enormous shot of credibility early on. It just carries through the rest of the film, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I know there's quite a lot of discussion and debate around the design of the alien ship as well. In Dan O'Bannon and Ron Schustert's original script, the eggs were found in an ancient pyramid-like structure on the planet, which would have been quite cool, but I think it's great the way it's done. And obviously, it was written out and the producers replaced it with an army bunker, which would have been fucking terrible. It's like, just an army bunker. That's crap. And then Scott came in and he's like, I like the ancient civilization idea, and he kind of changed it back, but I love what Scott did with that idea and turned it into the ship instead of this pyramid. You know, I think that's much better.
So what this means is, because I don't think it's totally clear in the film, is that the chamber with the alien eggs isn't actually on the alien spaceship. That's in the ancient structure, and the alien ship is on top of it.
Right. No, right.
So then when the abseil down, that shot of you see them abseiling, they're moving down from the ship into the structure.
Right.
They actually brought that pyramid idea back for Alien versus Predator with some interesting results, shall we say. Yeah, it's in there, yeah.
Oh, it is. I remember, yeah. Vividly.
So we've covered off quite a bit there with the facehugger sequence. I mean, pretty exceptional, right?
Oh, outstanding.
Yeah, amazing.
From one huge sequence, it's not long before we're into an even more iconic one. After Ash goes against Ripley's wishes and lets Kane aboard the Nostromo with the facehugger still attached, the creature detaches itself and dies. Everything is seemingly fine until lunchtime. In one of Hollywood's most famous scenes, Kane starts convulsing and spasming on the table, and to the shock and horror of the rest of the crew and the audience, an alien graphically bursts out of his chest and scurries away across the tabletop.
It does.
In a movie packed with great sequences, this is by a distance the most famous, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can criticise this scene if you want because, okay, that final effect shot of it scurrying away, a little bit comical. Yeah, fair enough. If you look close, you can maybe see a couple of rods like moving it about in Kane's chest. All right, fair enough. In the logic of it, you know, he's never felt this thing in his chest. They haven't x-rayed him. You know, you can pick logic faults in it as well if you want. But I think that's just missing the point because this scene is one you can just pause it. You can show it to anyone and say, you know what, this scene, it changed cinema because nothing was the same after it. We'd never, ever, ever seen anything like this before. And it's so brutal and it's so short, but it's to the point. You can barely take in what's happening. And I can easily imagine the likes of Sam Raimi and John Carpenter watching this and going, oh, Jesus Christ, right, better raise me game. You know, I thought I had some good ideas. Jesus Christ. God, look what we can get away with now. But for me, one thing that always makes the scene all the more effective, and it's something that it's really easy to miss because obviously it's the big effect shot you come for, but just watch Ash in this sequence. Ian Holm is so creepy here. Even before Kane starts choking and coughing and he's just eating, Ash gives him this little look. He just kind of cocks his head and just really pees at him really intensely. Yeah. And then when he does start coughing, he's just looking at him so closely.
He knows what's coming, doesn't he?
He knows what's coming. Everyone else is freaking out, and he isn't. And I think on repeat viewings, because like I say, it's easy to miss it, but Ian Holm really makes this scene for me.
I mean, the scene as a whole is just totally iconic, isn't it? And for good reason, because it is brilliant. It's still, having seen it many times and knowing what's coming, still fantastic now. At the time when audiences had no clue what was going to happen, this must have been so shocking in the best possible way. I said that the first facehugger sequence is exceptional, and I think Ridley Scott deserves a lot of credit for it. But here, I don't think he probably had to do quite as much. I think it's mostly there in the writing. The idea of a parasite planting an egg down somebody's throat and then later an alien gruesomely bursting out their chest is so fantastic. I just can't wrap my head around it. It's a great idea. I know that the moment the alien burst through Kane's chest as well, they created the mechanical torso laid out on the table, and John Hurt was under it and put his head, shoulders and arms through a hole on the table to make it all seem like one body. The mechanical torso was packed with animal guts and a small compressed air cannon. They activated the cannon, the torso burst open, the blood and guts spilled everywhere, and they pushed the alien puppet up from under the table. I think there's a myth this was all filmed in one take as well, but it wasn't because the mechanism didn't fire the first time. But it all looks fantastic again.
It's just incredibly shocking, isn't it? I mean, even John Hurt was said in an interview, he said he doesn't know how many people have actually seen it. He says everyone who's seen Aliens, probably 60% of people who's actually seen it, because everyone just kind of shuts their eyes or turns away from it. He said it's my best performance and no one's actually seen me performance. But it was, everyone says, oh, it's just one take, do they know what's happened? I think the first time that air cannon fires and the blood spurts out, they didn't know how much blood was going to come out. So I think all of the reactions are absolutely genuine from that very first spurt, and then he stops and then he convulses again, and I think you can see where that cut goes and where John Hurt is set, he's kind of set on the table where the alien's going to come through. But yeah, incredibly iconic. But it's the one thing about the film that always niggles me is the way that runs away. It's just a little bit too I expect its legs to like spin like Roger Rabbit or something, and it's like and it's like run across the table. Do you know what I mean? It just loses it a little bit for me. That and then the plate's just jumping out of the way. I think there's But I mean, it's iconic. It's incredible. It's just one of them scenes where really confidently done. It's just fucking brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, you have talked about it there, lads, this whole thing about the blood and the guts and how much it was shocking, but even the cast weren't expecting it to be so graphic. So when you get that shot of Lambert and she gets sprayed with blood, that's a genuine reaction from Veronica Cartwright. And I think you can tell she's absolutely disgusted by what's happening to her. So freaked out. And even Sigourney Weaver said like she thought John Hurt might have actually been dying, and the only reason she didn't break character was because nobody shouted cut.
Yeah.
Consummate professional, Weaver.
Yeah.
Too professional, if anything. They just thought he was dead. I also know that Yaphet Kotto, who plays Parker, said that he went home that night in a state of shock. He said he locked himself in the bathroom and refused to talk to his wife for like 4 hours. Traumatised by it.
I know as well as when they were prepping the scene and fitting the torso at the table, it took a long time. John Hurt would get really, really bored. So in the end, he was asking Ridley Scott for like cigarettes and a bottle of wine. But Scott was like, no chance, consummate professional. But the crew ended up just kind of giving it to him anyway, just kind of under the table. There you go, have a tab, have a glass of wine, you'll be fine.
Scott's a right bastard, isn't he? Traumatising everyone. Did you know as well that John Hurt wasn't the first person cast as Kane?
I did know that, yeah.
Do you know who the first person was?
I've forgotten his name now, but I know he was really, really poorly, like on the first day of shooting, and then they found out he was diabetic, right? And they took him out, but I can't remember his name.
Is it Peter Finch?
Nearly. John Finch.
John Finch, right. Yeah.
So he was an English actor, most well known for like Shakespeare roles. He played Macbeth and was also the lead in Frenzy, the Hitchcock film. And he took ill, like Westy said, during production and was diagnosed with diabetes. Scott said he had to be carried off the set and he was replaced by John Hurt. I mean, I'm sure John Finch would have been excellent, but Hurt's really memorable, seeing as he's only in the film for half an hour or so.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
To finish on the chestburster scene, we have a question from Patreon. Okay. So a benefit of being in All the Right Movies Patreon is that we'll answer your questions on the show. And Jamie Russell, hello Jamie.
Hello Jamie.
Jamie's asked us, how high on the iconic horror death list is the chestburster scene?
I think it's pretty high. I would say top 5.
Yeah.
For sci-fi horror, it's probably number 1. I can't think of anything more iconic or more impactful or more memorable than that. Yeah. Maybe kind of like the head exploding in Scanners. maybe. But that wouldn't happen without this. I can't think of anything before this, should I say, that had such an impact. Yeah. I think this set the benchmark, and everything that came after it. Or was this a massive thank you?
Yeah, I mean, iconic horror deaths. You've got the point of view sequence in Halloween, the first sequence in Jaws, Drew Barrymore in Scream, Johnny Depp in The Nightmare on Elm Street, maybe, and The Wicker Man, The Omen, Night of the Living Dead, all have iconic death scenes. But for me, I think there's two out there that transcend the genre and aren't just iconic horror scenes, they're iconic scenes full stop. One's the chestburster scene, and the other's the shower scene in Psycho.
Yeah.
In terms of status, Psycho will probably never be topped. So for me, I'd say the chestburster scene's probably number 2 behind Psycho.
Okay.
Yeah, much the same. I was just trying to think of ones that did equal it, and I've kind of came up with mostly ones he used. I've already mentioned. I do think, David Warner getting decapitated in The Omen, that's incredibly memorable, but it's not as good in terms of the effects as it is here. Edward Woodward getting burned at the end of The Wicker Man, just one
nice.
ending that is.
Yeah.
And the other one, not because it's in a great film necessarily, but one that did come to mind pretty quickly is the girl who gets wiped out by the bus in Final Destination.
Oh, yeah.
Just because I've seen that effect ripped off so many times.
Yeah.
And to be fair, the first time I saw it, my popcorn went absolutely flying when I saw that in the cinema. It is brilliantly done, but I would say for sheer, what the fuckery, this is still the one to beat.
John agreeing with that and then laughing at scanners? What on earth? Final Destination?
Would have thought it'd be the other way around.
Unbelievable.
I'm not sure whether I've done a beginning section on a movie that's as big as this one. There's some great scenes with Mother we just couldn't fit in, but in the two we've covered, the facehugger, then the chestburster, we've discussed some all-time iconic filmmaking, haven't we?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Just getting started.
The director.
We've mentioned him a lot already, and the director of Alien was Ridley Scott, one of the most well-known modern directors out there. At this point, he directed one feature, that was The Duelists, a historical drama released in 1977, but it was Alien that really put him on the Hollywood map.
Yeah.
From our neck of the woods as well, isn't he? South Shields.
He is indeed. Yeah, down the road.
So he is a huge name nowadays, but it's the first time we've covered a movie of his. So what do we think of Ridley Scott as a director generally, first of all?
What happened to Ridley Scott? I mean, come on. He was rivaled as one of my favourite directors when I was very first getting into films, and I just loved Blade Runner, I loved Alien, and I just was like, this guy's obviously the pinnacle. There was him and Kubrick, who I just kind of looked at and just thought, well, that's how it works. And then I don't know, he kind of lost touch with his real drive and his real sense of who he was visually, and I think this film and Blade Runner, he kind of proved himself. He didn't have to do anything else.
Yeah,
that's it. If you hit the ground running with Alien, you operate on 80% of it, and every single decision that's been made, and every single set that's been dressed, and every single bit of the facehugger, even putting the oysters in and putting the kidney in and knowing where all the fish bits go, and you organise all of that, and you create something this iconic and this good. You can't take your foot off the gas as far as I'm concerned, but he has done some absolute classics since. I mean, Gladiator's massive, Black Hawk Down's pretty good, but he's done some stinkers, hasn't he? I mean, Black Rain, what the fuck's that? 1492, come on. Kingdom of Heaven, Robin Hood, Hannibal, Away Ridley, man. Come on, man. In your native tongue. Let's not even get started on Prometheus. Let's just leave it there. But I mean, a visionary and a genius on this, and a visionary and a genius on Blade Runner. And I think leaving them two films in your legacy, that's all you need to do as an artist, I think.
Yeah, he does divide opinion a bit, I think, Ridley Scott. Some people do say he's a genius, and some people think he's massively overrated. I would say I'm somewhere in the middle, but I am probably more on the side of being a fan. He has made quite a few misses for me, but when he's good, he's bloody good, isn't he?
Yeah.
I'm a fan of Thelma and Louise in Gladiator. I'm a massive fan of that Hovis advert that he did back in the 70s.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah. Cobbled streets.
Yeah, it's amazing. But it's the back-to-back wallop of Alien in 79 and Blade Runner in 82 that stands out, obviously.
Yeah,
I mean, Blade Runner, just wow, still. Has any film, not just science fiction, but anything, ever looked better than Blade Runner? Actually, we watched it just a few weeks ago, and the visuals, that could come out now, and I'd still be amazed by it. He does have a great eye for visuals, and his movies always have this real aesthetic weight to them, for me. They always look huge, and stylistically, you usually feel like you're in the hands of someone who really knows what they're doing. Where he does fall down for me, though, is big Achilles' heel that stops him being Spielberg, Scorsese level, is his storytelling. I don't think he understands story and narrative as well as those other guys do. There's a few examples, but the recent Alien movies he did, Prometheus and Alien Covenant, standout for me. I like Prometheus as a concept, but the logic is all over the place, and Covenant just has the most basic errors you could ever see, with characters intentionally putting themselves in danger just because the script needs them to. I know Scott didn't write those scripts, but he didn't pick up on the problems either, so I think he does need the script to be done and finished for him. But like I say, once he has that great script, he's superb, and his best stuff stands up, and I think always will, as real classics.
Yeah, he's a visual director, isn't he?
Definitely.
Yeah. The first thing that I think of or feel when we talk about Ridley Scott is I do feel a sense of pride, because, you know, if we mentioned there, he's a local guy, and if you're from the northeast of England like we are, we're such a small region, and so for anyone to make any kind of name for themselves in film is an achievement, and then for him to be A-list, top of the table director, it's absolutely incredible what he achieved to come from such humble backgrounds. But that is a sentimental reaction, and I've got to take it away from that and look at him as a director. And I'm kind with you guys, it's generally one of frustration, because for every great film he makes, and he's made some great ones, he'll follow it up with 3 really average ones, and probably a stinker in there as well. And I'll look like the last 20 years, he's done a lot of films, but honestly the only ones I ever go back to are Black Hawk Down and The Martian. All the rest, very, very forgettable.
See, The Martian, even for me, was a bit forgettable, to be fair. I mean, you're never going to go, let's go back and watch White Squall on a Friday night. Let's get a takeaway and watch White Squall. Not going to happen.
Get a takeaway, obviously.
Well, obviously. Just watch anything else.
But ultimately, I do want to end up on a positive note for him, because he has made enough great films. And it is when he does happen upon a great script and he does align that with that great, incredible eye that he has with superb effects, fantastic production design, he can give you something special. And he has done that a few times.
And he has.
He's just inconsistent.
Well, Ridley Scott actually came to work on Alien quite late in the day. Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett had a first draft of a script, but nobody wanted to make it. Even Fox passed on it at first. But then, 2 things happened. Firstly, Walter Hill, who had some credibility having written and directed several small successful movies like The Getaway and Hard Times, he picked up the script and wanted to produce it. Then secondly, in May 1977, what happened?
Star Wars
was released. As we covered in our Star Wars episode, so check that out if you haven't already, Star Wars was a phenomenon that changed Hollywood, and suddenly science fiction movies were red hot. Fox had produced Star Wars, so went back to Alien and greenlit it immediately. Walter Hill said he didn't want to direct, and Fox went through quite a lot of other candidates before they got to Ridley Scott.
Right, yeah. Fox drew up a short list of names, and Scott was quite far down it, as I remember reading. The first asked Robert Altman if he'd be interested, but he said no. So I thought that would have been quite interesting. And Peter Yates, who directed Bullet, and Jack Clayton, who directed The Great Gatsby, they were considered. Robert Aldrich came very, very close, and he directed stuff like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane and The Longest Yard. But he talked himself out of the gig when he met with Hill and David Giler. I think he just wanted the money. I don't think he had the passion for the project. And Giler asked Aldrich, "What plans have you got for the facehugger?" And Aldrich said, "I'll just put some tubes on a guy's face. No one's going to remember it anyway." It's not going to get you a job, is it? When you see yourself in 5 years' time, not here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no one's remembered the facehugger, have they?
Yeah, idiot.
Well, finally, having been impressed by the duelists, Fox got to Ridley Scott. Like a lot of other filmmakers at the time, Scott had seen Star Wars and been blown away by it, and had some ideas on how he'd do a science fiction movie of his own. So when Fox approached him, he accepted the gig for Alien immediately. So Ridley Scott was hired. What do we think of his work as a director then on Alien?
I mean, for all the criticisms that we've had of him, it's this film and Blade Runner that they're the two that just make you say, no, he is worth a full episode, because it's just a concept that just plays completely to his strengths, and you can tell he's looked at this with the eye of an artist, but he's also not lost sight of what the film's got to be about, which is just pure terror, and it's all down to him how he's managed to combine the two. I think his work here is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I said before that give Ridley Scott a very good script and he'll deliver something special, and he does that here with Alien. The direction is world class, start to finish. He doesn't just take what's on the page and put it on the screen. He clearly had a really, really strong vision about what he wanted Alien to be, and he pulls it off brilliantly as well. Right from the first seconds where the camera silently moves around in Nostromo, as a visual setup for a movie, that's just astonishing to me. Introduces us to the world we'll be in, and also sets that ominous tone brilliantly well. And working with the actors, there's a few little tricks that Ridley Scott used on the set that I like. So to heighten the sense of claustrophobia for the cast, he had the walls of the set pushed slightly closer together every day, but didn't tell the cast he was doing it. He wrote full backstories for each character and gave them to the actors before shooting. And to try and create more natural tension between the characters, he asked Yaphet Kotto and Ian Holm to both antagonise Sigourney Weaver on the set. And those things worked, I think, because the cast are all excellent. Every actor in the movie is playing at least one of the most famous characters they ever played, and Scott gets great performances from all of them. So visually, conceptually, working with the cast and crew, I think Scott was incredible in every way, to be honest, on this one.
I think this is just Ridley Scott's head, isn't it? He's got so many ideas. He's got so much energy. He's got so much energy that he can build a whole world that's completely believable, and a spaceship that's completely believable, and then a cast of characters that are all believable. Every single thing about this film you buy into, and that's just all down to his approach and the real effervescence that he's got to make something. This real energy that he's got that comes across in the whole film. It comes across in every single camera move, every single performance, the way the scenes are blocked. The fact that he's got such a control over it, and based on the work that he does here, this is good enough to give you work for 40 years. And you can turn around years later and say to anybody, a new producer comes in, right, they've never heard of Ridley Scott, but they've seen Alien, and they don't know who Ridley Scott is, and they'll go, yeah, but we're doing the new Robin Hood film. Who's directing it? The guy who did Alien. Oh, fair enough. Do you know what I mean? It's just, it doesn't matter. You could do anything you wanted, but that's just what comes across this film. This is just a guy with just so much energy, so much vision, so much confidence. It's his film, and if anyone said to me what is Ridley Scott's vision, I would say Alien, Blade Runner, but I would just say this because he just seems to own the whole thing. It's perfectly done.
Yeah, it is Scott's vision, although he did cite 3 other movies as being big influences on him when he made Alien. One was Star Wars, like we said. Do you know what the other 2 were?
2001 Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think the influence of the visuals and the supercomputer from 2001 are obvious. But I've not seen a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but I know you both have because you did an episode on it. Can you see that as an influence on Alien?
Absolutely, 100%.
Definitely. It's the atmosphere and the way it just never lets up. And it's how oppressive it is. It's like the film is almost like sitting on top of you.
And I know Scott also played a massive part in getting the budget increased. Once he came on board to direct, while he was waiting for the initial $4.2 million budget to be greenlit by Fox, Scott went away and storyboarded the entire film, which took him, I think, 7 to 8 weeks.
Wow.
Brought the storyboards back, and they were that impressed by the storyboards that doubled the budget from $4.2 million to $8.4 million. Then storyboards are amazing. You can see them online. They are fucking unbelievable.
I was going to say, that must be one hell of a storyboard, that.
It should be released. I think they must have released it in print form. I haven't looked, but if they have, I'm buying it because it's unbelievable work. It's fantastic.
I mean, having said that he got more money than initially planned anyway, and despite the fact that I just said, he really lets films go for budget. He did on this one. Mid-shoot, he'd run out of money because the production had grown so big. So he'd gone to Fox to ask for another $2.6 million, which was going to take it to $11 million on total. And so to do this, he needed to have a meeting with their head honchos, and one of them just wanted to pull the plug on the whole project at this point and just sack the whole thing off. Scott obviously absolutely kicked off with this. The man just had a bit of a short fuse, and when he was ranting, he was pounding the table to make his point. He pounded the table so hard he broke his finger sideways.
Wow. Whoa.
Yeah. But that didn't stop the man. He just kept on going. So the secretary gave him a glass full of ice. He stuck his finger in that, and he just continued ranting until he got his $2.6 million.
Blimey.
Brilliant.
Yep.
You don't want to be on the receiving end of a South Shields rant. I went to school there. He didn't receive any Oscar recognition for Alien, Ridley Scott, but Peter Yates, who Westy mentioned had been considered to direct, was nominated for Breaking Away. If you were redoing those nominations today, surely Scott and Alien would be in there.
Yes, obviously.
100%. Clear the board for me.
To finish us off on Ridley Scott and Alien, I have a quote from Scott himself. He said, "They sent me the script and I loved it and was in Hollywood within a day. I adjusted things here and there and shouted a few times to get my own way, but all I really wanted to do was scare the shit out of people." Job done, I think.
Well done.
Yep.
Well
Mission
done.
accomplished. Come back
Achieved.
home.
The cast.
There was a big and highly accomplished ensemble cast worked on Alien. We're going to go into all of them as much as possible as we go, but are focusing now in full detail on the star of the show, the star of the whole Alien series. I'm talking, of course, about Sigourney Weaver as Warrant Officer Ellen Ripley.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds great.
So Sigourney Weaver is Ripley. Starting out in Alien as a slightly insubordinate, slightly unpopular crew member, once Captain Dallas and other colleagues start disappearing, she takes command of the crew and situation, eventually facing the alien in a final showdown and blowing it the fuck out into space.
Oh, yes.
One of the most iconic female leads in all of Hollywood is Ripley. How is she here? And Sigourney Weaver playing her? Westy?
I mean, for our first film, right, it's astonishing. It's astonishingly good. I mean, she's
Incredible.
just totally immersed in the whole performance, and it's so believable. It's so good, and she should be annoying on the page. Yeah. She should be like a little brat, and you should be like, oh, well, I'm doing this, and I'm playing by the rules, I'm playing by the book, and you should be thinking, well, I want you to get fucking killed first. But she doesn't. Like, she has this real energy that she brings to it, and it just really, really works. And I would put her up there with like Clarice as like one of my favourite kind of heroines of cinema. She's just such a powerful presence, and it works really, really well. And I think, we've got all of the gender roles in the whole film are kind of punished if you stick towards your gender role a little bit too much. I think all the guys and the masculinities in there, they get punished for playing out that role of the masculine. They get, Dallas is going down, I'm going to go down and do it, I'm going to sort all that out. And they always get punished for playing that role. And Sigourney Weaver and Ripley have this incredible challenge, this incredible arc where her whole genre is completely flipped, and she has to have this masculinity, she has to have this real drive, and she has to have this complete break from who she is and become something completely different. And I think Sigourney Weaver pulls that off with aplomb, not only in this but also in Aliens. I don't want to go into Aliens because we've covered that already, but for somebody to do it so well twice, and for this to be your first film and do it so well here and so convincingly, I've got nothing else but absolute praise for her, to be honest. Like, it's astonishing.
Yeah, she's such a great character, is Ripley. We did talk about it on our Aliens episode where we said the writing of the character from James Cameron is superb, and it is. But he's building on the fantastic work that's been done in Alien. There's a youthful naivety to Ripley here, certainly at the start of the film, that's gone by Aliens. She's a right little rebel at the start, says what she likes and always makes it known if she doesn't like or agree with an order. And when she doesn't, she's always fucking right as well. She wants to go after Dallas, Kane and Lambert when she finds out the message isn't an SOS but a warning, and she doesn't want to let them back on the ship either. Both times she's stopped by Ash, and both times she's totally right. And Sigourney Weaver, I mean, has anybody ever been more perfectly cast? Or has any other actor or actress made a role so definitively theirs as Weaver has done with Ripley? They're almost inseparable. When I think of one, I think of the other straight away.
Yeah, definitely.
It was Sigourney Weaver's first major role too, like you mentioned, Westy, which is even more impressive. She's just perfect. Ripley's intelligent, she's a total badass, she doesn't take any shit, and in Alien especially, she's fucking hot. Case closed.
Yeah, she's incredible. But what I like about Ripley in the setup of this film, I don't think it's like immediately apparent that she's going to be the survivor at the end. I think it's kind of what you guys are saying. She's almost like too clever at some points. So you think, she's going to get herself into trouble, isn't she? Because she's getting a bit too cocky for herself. She's like pushing the limits of authority here, and she's, so she's going to get killed off. So I like how it sets that up. Like, by the end, it's almost kind of blind luck that she happens to be the one who has survived. She's the one who does that like pretty stupid decision to go off and save the cat at the end.
Yeah.
It's the one the one dumb thing she does in the film, but she still doesn't get punished for it. She's obviously resourceful, she's smart, she's principled. The fact that she doesn't want to let Kane back on the ship, she wants to keep him in quarantine, and like you said, that's absolutely the right thing to do. She wants to get the dead facehugger off the ship, and again, that was the right thing to do. Nobody's listening to her, but she also just takes no shit from anyone. She stands up to pretty much everyone in this film. She stands up to Dallas, she stands up to Ash, she stands up to Parker and Brett together. Yeah. Like when they're trying to gang up on her, like in the low levels, and she just takes no shit from them whatsoever.
Why don't you just fuck off?
Yeah.
Exactly. But the thing is, you've got to believe that a female character can dominate in those scenes, like especially against like two pretty masculine actors like Yaphet Kotto and Harry Dean Stanton. You've really got to believe she can dominate those, and Weaver does it effortlessly. Like every single emotion and element of Ripley's character, she's just brilliant at putting those on screen. And by the end, when she's just radiating like pure fear at what she's going through and what she's got to deal with, and when she's by herself, you're just terrified along with her, because she just convinces you this is just the most horrific situation anyone could be in. But as a performance, iconic.
Yeah.
Well, Sigourney Weaver was a complete unknown at the time of Alien, so of course there were lots of other names in the running to play Ripley. Some big names as well. Have you heard any?
Was Jane Fonda in there?
Well, firstly, Veronica Cartwright auditioned. Fox loved her, and Scott did too, but not for Ripley, so he cast her as Lambert. Also, Genevieve Bujold and Catherine Ross were considered. Helen Mirren auditioned, and according to Ridley Scott, it was actually Warren Beatty who recommended Weaver after he saw her in a Broadway play. They got Weaver into audition, and one of the Alien producers, Gordon Carroll, tells a good story about that audition. He said, "We were auditioning at the Regency, but Sigourney went to the wrong hotel, so was late. Her agent rang us and begged us to wait for her. 30 minutes later, we heard outside footsteps of somebody sprinting towards the door, then slowing down, then silence as she composed herself outside. There was a knock at the door. I went to open it, and right before me, Ripley was standing there."
Nice. Amazing. I'm pretty sure Meryl Streep was pretty close bit to being in there, and she was going to have an audition, but I know she was mourning John Cazelle's death at the time of the casting, so she couldn't get involved.
Yeah, that's right.
That would have been pretty interesting. But Scott had some reservations, and he wanted to get a female perspective on the character, so he had 12 women secretaries from Fox. How many secretaries were at Fox? You just need one at the front door, didn't you? But anyway, we got 12 women secretaries from Fox to watch Sigourney Weaver's screen test as Ripley. He said that an argument broke out over whether she was more like Jane Fonda or Faye Dunaway, and he knew he had his leading lady.
Lovely.
So, yeah, based on that, Scott cast Sigourney Weaver as Ripley, and the rest is history. So, what's your favourite Ripley moment in Alien?
Mine is her confrontation with Ash in the medical lab after he breaks quarantine to Kane back on the ship with everyone else, because he's disobeyed her command, as she says. She was the ranking officer at the time, and I just love how she's clearly making him awkward. She's like just going in there, she's like playing like around with his toys, and he just want a girl to come in and touch his toys. She's playing with the microscope and looking through it, and he's just like, please don't touch that. He's just so awkward around it. It's fantastic, and she's ultra sarcastic, like when she says, "I'm sorry," and she clearly isn't. She knows what she's doing. She loves winding him up, and it's all about her reasserting her authority, and she's putting Ash back in his place. And the interesting thing I find about the scene is, like, on the page the dialogue's quite clunky. It's all about breaking protocol and playing things by the book, by the manual. It's quite cliched, but Weaver really sells it. She really makes it impactful, and I think in retrospect it's the scene that I think Ash is starting to think Ripley is going to be a real problem to him. So I think it spurs the plot on, and I think it's just a great bit of acting from her.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, she's great in every scene, isn't she?
Yeah.
But I'm going for the bit after Brett and Dallas have been killed and the 4 remaining crew members have a meeting. It's the scene where Ripley basically takes charge, and Weaver's acting is outstanding. Ripley's saying what she thinks they should do. She's saying it's using the air shaft. We'll cut off every vent until we have it cornered, and then we'll blow it the fuck out into space. She's totally right, and it's a really good plan. But Parker keeps interrupting her, and Ripley totally shouts him down like, "Will you listen to me, Parker? Shut up!" Weaver's delivery of that is brilliant. But I also like it because I mentioned before how Scott asked Yaphet Kotto to antagonise Weaver on the set. And Kotto says that when they shot this scene, between every take he kept saying to Sigourney Weaver, "Come on, sister, you got to give me more than that," till eventually she bit his head off.
You can tell, like, you can absolutely tell.
Definitely
furious. You really can.
Mine's one that we spoke about where I said that she should have been annoying. It's when they come back and the face got attached to Kane's face, and she's actually standing her ground and saying to Dallas, "No, you're not allowed to come back on board the ship. No, it's against protocol." And I just find that would have been so difficult to deliver in like a meaningful way for the audience to kind of relate to that, because you want them to come on board. You're like, let them on. But it's that whole point where the horror starts, where you start questioning what's right and what's wrong, and who's in charge and who isn't, and what's going to happen, and what kind of protocols they're going to break next. And I think she just stands her ground there, and for me, that's when she defines her character, and she doesn't let up from that moment. She fixates on that character, and she sticks to her ground from that moment. So for me, that's the first time you see it, and one of my favourite Ripley moments.
I love that bit as well. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, for her brilliance in Alien, Sigourney Weaver didn't get any Oscar recognition, but it established her as a major star, and from there she appeared in big movies like Ghostbusters, Aliens, Gorillas in the Mist, Working Girl, Avatar, among others. And looking back at her time on Alien, Sigourney Weaver now says, "I liked Ripley straight away because she was so unattractive." I beg to differ.
Second time, could have been that.
she did what was right and would stand up for herself. Looking back now, I totally get why Ridley cast me, and I'm very glad that he did.
Yeah.
Nice.
So are we.
Yeah.
The middle.
After the baby alien scurries off the dinner table, the crew go looking for it. To say they're out of the depth is an understatement, and in 2 massive sequences, the fully grown xenomorph reveals itself to us. It attacks Harry Dean Stanton's Brett in the claw room, and when Captain Dallas goes looking for it in the air shafts, he comes a cropper as well.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, we're in the horror movie. What are our thoughts on these sequences?
My favourite of these by far and away is Brett's death, has to be, because just the lighting on it. I don't want to sound like a complete nerd.
Of course it is.
Obviously.
I don't give a shit about the story. Like the way it's lit, like the water coming down. He's got this kind of like, it's almost like this baptism, this Christ kind of like symbolism. But then the alien almost appears kind of as Christ itself from the crucifix coming down to punish. It's just got this incredible iconography, and it's got this incredible sense of dread all the way through it. And he's just looking for the cat. It's just a nightmare. He's like, get out of there. And it's just the sound design. You've got that kind of heartbeat on the score, and it just pulsates, and it's just there. And I know they had 2 alien suits built, and one was for a gymnast, and the gymnast was actually in this sequence. And if you look behind Brett in one of the sequences, he's kind of rolled up into a ball, holding onto the chain, and then just like unrolls from this ball, and it just looks so terrifying, but it's so simple. And then just the way he dies, just that tongue in the head, and he's just pulled up, and just the screams. It's just, this looks like Blade Runner for me. This is the most, like, from where Ridley Scott's influence comes. Like, if you look at this scene, this could have been a scene from Blade Runner. It looks that good. You can tell this is where he's kind of made his mark here. And the lighting on this, especially the camera work, everything is just an absolute lesson in horror. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think if Hitchcock directed a science fiction movie, it might be something like this.
You've tried, for like an hour and a half.
Unbearable. The tension as Brett wanders alone around engineering is like palpable. He's looking for Jonesy, the ship's cat, and they actually had a German shepherd on set to get the terrified hiss from Jonesy that they wanted. Yeah. Brett finds that skin that the alien shedded. That's a great touch.
Yeah.
And the moment the alien reveals itself is just stunning. It drops down behind Brett and then slowly stands up to its full height, and that close-up of its snarling, dripping mouth is just the stuff of nightmares. Yeah. Imagine thinking you're looking for like a tiny baby alien, you turn around and that thing's standing there in front of you. Jesus.
Yeah. It's like when he picks up the skin and you think that must be tiny, and it just like keeps getting bigger, and you're just like, fuck me.
I think my favourite thing about this sequence, though, is what you mentioned there, Westy. Just before the alien attacks, Brett's looking up into the rafters and letting the water drip on his face. There's a point of view shot from Brett, and we see in full view the alien just hanging there. But first time you watch it, we've no idea this thing even exists, so you don't even see it. And then on second watch, it's like, how did I not see that the first time? That's
exactly, yeah. I know as well that this scene caused some contention between Scott and the producers, basically around the dripping water that we've both mentioned there. Scott knew that he wanted some somber, ominous sound design, so came up with the idea of this water dripping from the ceiling. But the producer's like, why is the dripping water in a spaceship? So Scott was like, condensation. Just went, okay then.
All right then.
Yeah,
that's
fine.
a thing, isn't it?
Yeah, there's none anywhere else. That's some condensation, that like.
It's like a waterfall.
It is.
When Dallas buys it in the vents, I think it's just incredible, because I think at this point of the film, I think he's still being set up like he's the guy who's going to come through at the end. He's going to be, the heroic captain. He's kind of softly spoken, but he's still a good guy, even called Dallas. It's a heroic name. So when he's taken out, especially quite early on, like relatively speaking in the film, it's such a big shock.
It's Lambert here as well, though. It's her performance that really, really adds to it. It's like, it's there, it's right there with you. And you're just like, oh, Jesus Christ. It's horrible. Yeah.
Skerritt is Dallas. He's so calm, he's so collected, he's so cool under pressure. So when he's in there and he does that line, I want to get the hell out of here. And he's so panic-stricken. You're like, oh, that's it. He's gone. He's absolutely fucked. His goose is well and truly cooked. But like the thing is, him as a captain, if you think about like pretty much every decision he makes is the wrong one. Yeah. Like he gets so many things wrong in this film. And even in this, if he just stayed calm and he turned that radio off and he stopped listening to everyone, he stopped freaking out, he would have probably been all right, because I think his actual plan of shutting off escape vent after escape vent to trap it, it's pretty sound. And he has like the tactical advantage because he freaks out. He's absolutely done for, and I think it contrasts really well with the alien. And I love the fact that the alien isn't just like blundering around the tunnels, running around, grabbing him. It actually sits and it waits for him. I think it's absolutely fantastic how it does that. It's the sound effects here, how Ridley Scott makes a sequence sound like those doors as the kind of iris claws. That's fantastic. I mean, Westy mentioned it in the Brett sequence, but that pulsing heartbeat in the background. The sound of that tracker just beeping and getting like more and more intense as it goes along. It's all just works really, really well. So when it gets him, it's just like, oh, Jesus Christ. A lot like the chestburster sequence. Again, just pay attention to Ash in this sequence, because there's one shot of him that is just in such contrast to everyone else. Like, Lambert is absolutely having a meltdown. Parker's trying to calm it down. Ripley's trying to tune the both of them out and try to talk Dallas out of the situation. And you just get this one shot of Ash, and he's just got this blank, expressionless look on his face as he's just like looking at what's happening. He doesn't, and you can tell you can tell later on what he's doing when he realizes he's a robot, because it's what he says. He's collating information. He's not bothered about Dallas. He's not trying to rescue him. He's taking in information about what this alien is capable of, and if it means Dallas gets killed, so be it. So again, it's just one shot, but it's really effective.
Yeah, it was all shot in half a day, the Dallas sequence, which I find pretty astonishing. And I love, like you mentioned there, Matt, how Scott subverts expectations, because, like you said, since the start, Dallas has been set up as the hero. Yeah. He's the captain, he's played by a man, Tom Skerritt, he was top of the bill, and then from nowhere, suddenly he's gone. I can remember watching this and thinking, well, he's definitely coming back. I've seen movies before, but in this case he doesn't, which is great.
I do love Skerritt in the role, but did you know who they originally wanted? And I think the film would have been really effective if they'd got him.
Who was that?
They wanted Harrison Ford.
Wow.
Really?
You think?
Yeah.
Wow.
Can you imagine Harrison Ford this, top of the bill? You think, oh, Han Solo on board the spaceship, he's going to be fine. And then boom, he's out of there. Even more effective.
Yeah, that would have subverted expectations even more if it had been Ford, wouldn't it? Yeah. I know the producer spoke to Tommy Lee Jones as well about playing Dallas, but he said he wanted to play the alien.
Just no costume. Just really angry Lee Jones.
Even scarier, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Did he say that on Men in Black?
Skerritt wasn't keen either at first. When they first approached him, he said no, because he thought the script had at the time was rubbish, and the budget was like $2 million. Like, so he thought, well, this is just going to be some schlocky B movie. He changed his mind when Scott was hired to direct, because Skerritt had seen The Duelists, which is amazing, and he said that movie was like a painting, and I thought if anyone can make this movie work, it's this guy, and he's absolutely right.
Yeah, good call. Fair play. Skerritt also got some percentage points from the profits as well, so worked out pretty well for him, I think.
No, too right.
So we've waited over an hour, but when the full-size alien shows up, it doesn't disappoint, does it?
No, definitely not.
No, not a bit of it.
By this point, Kane, Brett and Dallas are all gone, and the remaining crew members are in a bit of a pickle. A pickle with acid for blood.
Say the least, Tom.
To say the least.
Things are about to get even worse, though. After Ripley speaks to Mother and discovers it and Ash are in cahoots to get the alien back to Earth, Ash tries to kill Ripley, and Ripley is saved when Parker bashes Ash's head in with a fire extinguisher. It's thrilling sequence one after another by this point. How do I like this one?
I think the thing that strikes me is from this whole sequence is how brilliant Ian Holm is. I think the lack of emotion that he portrays as he's doing, you know, all of the, and Sigourney Weaver gives as good as she gets, and they're really going for it, but it's that lack of emotion, and I think it's the way that he rolls that magazine up and tries to emulate what the alien has done, and tries to put it down her throat and tries to kill her in the same way. He tries to have this purity, and he tries to emulate what he's already seen, and it's something that he can't do, and he's never going to be that good, that it is almost a porn magazine, and he is surrounded by these images, and this whole imagery of this sexuality that's there, and then that's also brought into the sequence. And I think when the guys come in, they just don't know what's going on, especially Parker, even though you can see it, but the reactions are just so standoffish, and it's just what's going on. And the amazing thing is that as an audience, we don't know what's going to happen. The crew don't really know what's going to happen either. We're in the same boat. We're like, well, what's happening with this guy? And then when that head comes off, it's incredibly, incredibly shocking. And I know that when one of the first screenings of this, the usher actually passed out. Wasn't it the chestburster sequence? It was when his head came off.
Really?
One of the ushers in the cinema actually just passed out.
Free ice cream must have been then if the usher passed out.
Yeah, it's just melting on the floor. Even though it's like Ash's blood running along the cinema. It's probably what freaked him out. Loads of ice cream everywhere. Incredibly shocking, but again, just a really, really, really good sequence.
Yeah, Ash trying to kill Ripley by pushing a roll-up magazine down her throat is just creepy as hell.
Awful.
And so is the moment Parker takes Ash's head off with that fire extinguisher. When that happens, Ash's body is still flailing around, and the way they did that was there was a guy who was like 3'6" inside an Ash model suit controlling it. I saw an interview with Ridley Scott where he said, "Look at the arms, you can tell."
You can when you look, but you're just too shocked. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's the one bit of the film that I really wish I could have gone in blind to see, because it's such a shocking moment. And on one hand, it should be absolutely ludicrous, the idea that one of them has been a robot all along, even though you see him eating with the rest of them. But it's brilliant. It's one of the best directed sequences in the film. I love how it starts. It's not a jump scare as such, but that reveal of Ash when Ripley leans back in Mother, and he's just there with that creepy grin on his face.
There's that drip, isn't it, down from his head?
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. There's all these elements that you don't know what the hell is going on. Why has he got milk coming out of him? And then by the end, when his head is just flailing off, you're just completely won over by this scene. Like I say, it could have absolutely ruined the film, but it doesn't. It just, frankly, it just like improves it when you think, this film can't get any more intense or any more shocking. They're like, right, watch this bit.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? And then Ripley says, well, the shuttle doesn't take 4. And then when his head comes off, I'm thinking, oh, that's good. They can all get away now.
Yeah.
The scene just after this where Ash's head is on the table and they're talking to it, the innards of Ash were a combination of spaghetti, milk, meat and onion rings.
Sounds delicious.
Does it? Just heat it up. That is the one thing of the film, that when they are talking to that head, and it is clearly like a model head, and then it's Ian Holm, and then it's a model head. But when Ridley Scott was being interviewed, he said because of the quality of the latex back then and under the heat of the lights, it just shrank. So they just had to roll with it. And he knows about it, so we just had to roll with it.
Yeah, that cut, it does look ropey as hell nowadays. Surely they should have cut away and then cut back to Ash's head, but they go straight from Ash's model head to Ian Holm's head in one cut, don't they? Which makes it so obvious.
Yeah, it's really jarring.
Once the chestburster reveals itself, the film is relentless. Back-to-back exciting sequences for the rest of its runtime, and none more so than those two we've just talked about.
Nope.
Yep.
Nope. Yep. Nope.
Is it no as it yet?
Maybe no, maybe yes. Maybe fuck yourself.
The crew.
There was a relatively unknown director and lead actress on Alien, and a lot of the team behind the scenes weren't hugely well known either. We're going to talk in detail about Jerry Goldsmith, the composer, Derek Van Lint, the director of photography, and H.R. Giger as a designer of the creature. But, as ever, we're beginning with the writing. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Yep.
So, Alien was written by Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett. Both were very much unknown science fiction writers at the time. O'Bannon had co-written John Carpenter's Dark Star in 1974 and was actually a writer on Alejandro Jodorowsky's ill-fated Dune. And Shusett had no screen credits at all prior to Alien. Massively inexperienced in terms of Hollywood, the two writers then. But how good a job did they do on Alien? Matt?
A really impressive job. The one thing that stands out to me more than anything is how the basic concept of this film is the basic concept of like countless Star Trek episodes or Doctor Who episodes or cheesy 50s science fiction films. In Alien gets on board a ship and kills the crew members. It's just so basic. It's been done so many times before, but just never like this, because they give it a real 70s twist. And I think a lot of that comes down to the dialogue, how there's just so much like lazy bickering between these crew members as soon as they wake up. There's none of that kind of stilted dialogue that you get in a lot of science fiction films from before this. And I think it does such a great job of establishing those 7 characters really quickly. And straight away you can see the hierarchy on board that ship, and you can see that basically these guys have been living on top of each other for so long, and they're just really getting on each other's nerves, and everyone just wants to go home, and everyone just wants to get paid, and they just want to get out of each other's company because they've been stuck together for so long. And I think the script does a really good job of telling you like who's getting on whose nerves. Like in particular, I love that little bit of dialogue you get between Ripley and Lambert, where she's like, "That's not our system, I know that." It's ultra sarcastic. You can tell those two are just sick of the sight of each other. And I think that all comes from the script. I think it does a really good job of establishing that. And because it's so grounded and everything feels really believable and really lived in, when it starts integrating all the more fantastical elements, so the aliens, Ash becoming a robot, I buy it all because I buy into this world right from the beginning. Nothing feels like outrageous or unbelievable here. I don't think it's all amazing. I think the dialogue can be a bit over the place. Like at one point, Parker actually says, "This place gives me the creeps."
Yeah.
Which is just like so cliched. But it does have some great dialogue in there as well. Like when Ash is just the head on the table and he's talking about the alien, where he's describing it as a survivor and unclouded by morality.
Yeah.
That's fantastic stuff. So I wish the dialogue was a bit more even because it is a bit all over the place. But overall, it may not be a script that jumps out as like an amazing screenplay, but for the type of film that it is, it's really pretty great.
Yeah, I agree. I think the writing is really good. The story is simple, but they tell it really well. The characters have no backstory, but still feel fleshed out just enough for us to care about them. And like you mentioned, Matt, the dynamic between the crew members is really well done. I think one of the reasons that works so well is that when they wrote the script, O'Bannon and Shusett didn't specify what gender any of the characters were. Yeah. They just gave their names. And Helen Mirren, who I mentioned auditioned for Ripley, said, when you read it, you had no idea which character was male and which was female. There was no a lean 32-year-old woman who doesn't realise how attractive she is. There was none of that. That was a revelation.
Yeah.
The other part of the writing I love wasn't done by O'Bannon and Shusett. A copywriter called Barbara Gibbs came up with the famous tagline, "In space, no one can hear you scream," which might be the best movie tagline ever. It's amazing.
Yeah, easily.
It's fantastic.
And Westy, what do you think?
For me, this is a bit of a mixed bag. I've watched a couple of documentaries on this, and I feel really, really sorry for Dan O'Bannon, and not so much for Shusett, 'cause I think he was a bit of a pain in the arse on set for people, because he was, I came up with a chestburster, so he's bounding ideas all over the place. But I think Dan O'Bannon just wanted to do something that was meaningful, and they both wrote a script that was good enough to get bought, and I think that script that got bought is definitely not what's on the screen. I think the ideas are there. All of the crew had different names. They didn't specify anything, like John said, which I think is good, but Walter Hill and David Giler got a hold of it, and they've completely turned it around, and they created the shooting script, which is pretty close to what we see on the screen. So I think O'Bannon and Shusett, they were the ideas men, and they put something together to get that script sold, and then it was Walter Hill and David Giler who took that further and almost didn't make it theirs anymore. So I feel quite sorry for them in that respect, to the point where O'Bannon didn't want to go to the premiere, he didn't want to see it, but they forced him to go, and he sat and he watched the film and he just wept, and he just thought, there's a lot of my ideas actually made it through, because they tried to improve on them and they couldn't, and they've actually made it through. And these ideas, it just shows that the original idea is the most important thing, and you can sugarcoat it as much as you want to, but it's that original concept, and I think they need credit for that, and he is credited for that reason. And I don't think Walter Hill and David Giler even get a writing credit. I'm not too sure if they do or not.
No, they don't.
So that from that point of view, they were inexperienced, but they were hungry, exactly the same as Ridley Scott was, and I think that comes across in the idea of the writing, and that works really, really well. And that sequence that you like, Matt, with Ash, that was just made up like on the day. That they needed something to fill in the exposition. That was just made up on the day. Wow. You have my sympathies.
That's
that
incredible.
was just like Ridley Scott just sitting there.
Yeah,
great. And we're all just coming up with, we need something here that's going to have a bit of a gut punch. So it was built like all good films, like we spoke about on Apocalypse Now, like we spoke about on Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like we spoke about on a lot of these films that we love so much. They never arrive finished. Nothing brilliant ever arrives finished, and I think this is a really good example of that. What I do love about the writing is that O'Bannon is credited for that idea, and I think that's the most important part of it.
I agree. Yeah, that concept is just incredible. Well, you can't imagine the film being called anything other than Alien now, but that was actually not the original title.
No.
Have you heard what the first ones were?
It's a pile of shit.
Yes.
Star Beast.
Yeah.
Star Beast.
Crap.
It is terrible. Even before they got to Star Beast, though, there was a couple of others as well. So Dan O'Bannon's first draft was called Memory.
Wow. Why?
No idea why. That doesn't seem to have any thematic or narrative relevance at all. So I don't know why it was called that.
Did he put the wrong front page on it?
Another working title was They Bite, which makes no sense. I mean, there's only one of them for a start.
Yeah, for a start.
It doesn't bite.
And it doesn't bite. And then he changed it to Star Beast, but they didn't like that either. And after reading through the script, they realised how many times the word alien was mentioned, and they were shocked to discover there'd never been a film called Alien before, so changed it to that. I mean, Alien is a great title, isn't it?
Yeah. And the main reason he did it is because he looked at it and he went, that's a noun and also an adjective, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
The thing about the script as well, which is like Westy's kind of alluded to, which is that David Giler and Walter Hill had input into it, which they haven't been credited for, but they did change a lot of important things about it. The character names, for a start. Originally, you had Standard, Roby, Broussard, Melkinus, Hunter, and Faust, and obviously they all got chucked out the window.
Yeah, I think Ronald Shusett said he thought they did that just to try and get a writing credit on the film, David Giler and Walter Hill. But I mean, the names that we get are better than those original ones, surely.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, much better. But the other thing is, I don't know, like, if it just clicked as you heard them there, but you might notice there's only 6 characters there. That's because Ash was their creation as well. He wasn't in the original script at all. That was totally came down to Giler and Hill, so that entire subplot, that's their idea as well.
I mean, that's definitely for the better, I think. The whole Ash Mother conspiracy subplot is great. It doesn't take up too much of the story, but adds a much-needed extra dimension to the film, for me, I think.
Definitely.
Exactly. Starts off as an egg of ideas and ends up a fully grown xenomorph.
Lovely. Well, creatively, the starting point of the film, the whole Alien series, I think, is the alien creature itself, which is a pretty unique idea. What do you think of that, the whole facehugger to chestburster concept?
I mean, it's incredible. I mean, just to think of that, you just go, I've struck gold immediately. Yeah, there's nothing like it. It's just, it's got all the terror, it's got all the horror, it's got all the intelligence. You just go, that I can base a whole film around that, and then you go, actually, I can base a series of films around that, and that's what they've done. You never get tired of that. And what Ridley Scott was said in an interview as well, which I never kind of touched on, but it happens again in Alien 3, is that Scott's approach was that whoever found the egg would have the facehugger attached to it. And then when the alien bursts from it, it basically takes in all of the elements of the host and then becomes like that host, which is why the alien is quite human-like. And then in Alien 3 is quite dog-like because it comes from a dog. Yeah. So I think that in itself as an idea is incredible.
It's great. I mean, the concept of the alien itself is where the writing really excels for me. That whole idea of a parasite that attaches itself to a human, implants an egg inside them, then a huge killer alien bursts out of them, is the greatest idea for a Hollywood monster ever, for me. Yeah. Total genius. I mean, it needs the incredible design and production work to make it credible, but just as an idea, that must have blown people away when they first read the script back in the 70s.
Yeah.
And Matt, what do you think of it?
Yeah, much like you guys. I mean, how can you not just be impressed with this idea? The idea they've got of taking a creature through its entire life cycle, from its birth through to adult, and these human characters just get caught up in it and they can't deal with any aspect of it. And I love how it changes. First of all, you think it's this face hugger, which is disgusting enough, and then it's the chestburster, which is, terrifying enough, and then it gets fully grown. It never stops changing. It never stops upending your expectations of what you have to deal with, and it just gets progressively worse and worse. And the thing I like about it is how it, first of all, it starts attacking the most vulnerable part of the human anatomy, the mouth, fossa, and self in there, and then when it comes out through what you would typically call probably the strongest part of the human anatomy, your chest bone, probably the strongest bone in the human body, and it just comes to there no problem.
Yeah.
And once it's done that, it's like, you know what, well, you're all fucked.
Yeah.
There's not a single thing we can do about this.
Terrifying.
It's absolutely fantastic.
Well, I know that when they first started writing the script, O'Bannon and Shusett had the idea of an alien aboard a spaceship, but didn't know how to get the alien on the spaceship, and they'd reached a bit of a writing impasse. And then one night, Ronald Shusett said that he woke up in a cold sweat. He called O'Bannon immediately and said, "I've got it. The alien jumps on one of their faces and fucks them." And rather than thinking he was a madman, O'Bannon said to Shusett, "My God, that's it. We've got the movie."
Then they went away and did some research into insects and took inspiration from braconid wasps, which lay their eggs inside caterpillars. So the whole idea developed into the facehugger.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I prefer that description too. It fucked their faces.
Well, yeah,
sure.
so do I. So do I.
Definitely, yeah. I would have gone with that one first, yeah.
I prefer many descriptions to that, to be honest.
The face fucker. The thing is, though, as much as we're saying, it's an amazing idea, it might not have been amazingly original, because they actually got sued for plagiarism, because after the film was released, Fox received a lawsuit from a man called A.E. Van Vogt, and he'd written a science fiction story in 1939 called Discordant Scarlet, and in that story there's a lone survivor of an alien race, and that infiltrates a spaceship and starts implanting eggs into the crew's bellies. So they got in a little bit of trouble, but the truth of it, I don't think it's ever going to be really known, so it got settled out of court.
Wow, what a rip-off.
It's not the same, is it?
Stop the podcast.
I hate it.
It's not the same. Let's do a podcast on that book.
Yeah, go away to read Discordant Scarlet.
Yeah.
Talk about shit titles.
Yeah.
For writing Alien, Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett didn't get any award recognition, and they collaborated together on other projects afterwards, like Video Nasty Dead and Buried, Total Recall, and the legendary Alien vs Predator.
Legendary.
Before passing away in 2009, Dan O'Bannon said about Alien, "My script was professional and tight. The suspense was there. I've spent all my years studying how to write good suspense. David Geil and Walter Hill took lots of that out, but thankfully Ridley put it back in. It's the best thing I've done."
It is.
Really is. Better than Dark Star. It's funnier anyway.
Music plays an important role in any feature film, and really more so than in a film like Alien, where the tone is so important. The composer of the music on Alien was a big name, the acclaimed Jerry Goldsmith.
Yeah.
He was already well known at this point, having scored movies like Planet of the Apes, Papillon, Chinatown and The Omen. So one of the biggest Hollywood composers out there is Jerry Goldsmith.
Yeah.
How good does his work on Alien, do you think?
I think it's up there with his best, I would say.
Wow.
And I think what's interesting in saying that is that it's also really, really minimalist. At the same time, it's not bombastic all the way through. But I don't really mean that's a criticism, because it always fits the scene, it always fits the tone of the film, it always suits its purpose. And when it comes in like big, it really works. But when it's eerie and it's low key, it works. When it's heart pounding, it really adds to the scene. And what I find just as striking, those moments where there isn't any soundtrack and it cuts to silence, like you've got that bit where the first end of the alien craft, the score goes, and you've just got all the diegetic sound of like the howling wind and the breathing through the spacesuits.
Yeah.
And when that music does start come back in, those kind of insect-like strings is the best way to call them. It's just really effective. It always reminds me of that scene in The Exorcist, you know, where they pull up Reagan's dress and you can see "Help Me."
Yeah.
Like,
oh, yeah.
Her body.
Yeah.
Always reminds me of the music from there. So I think it's really fantastic, that bit. So, yeah, big fan of it. I think it always suits whatever tone the particular scenes are going for. I think my favourite bit, so I would say, is when the ship takes off and lands on the planet. I love that music. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that is brilliant. I think aside from the main theme, there's not too much that stands out as massively memorable for me. It's not full of hooks and choruses like the score James Horner did for Aliens, for example. Yeah. But it's still essential, I think. Yeah. Scott's going for a very specific tone in the film, and that's what Goldsmith gives him. The music to me is mostly about setting a mood, and he does that from the very first shots of the film when we're moving around the Nostromo right until the end aboard the space shuttle. The music never really takes over the movie or really elevates it like Goldsmith at his best can do, but that's not what Scott wanted, I don't think. No. And the music is still integral to the film. It's excellent work.
I mean, from that opening score, from that opening shot, it just marries so well with the visuals, doesn't it? I mean, I know Goldsmith tried to approach this totally different, and he wanted to make it quite romantic, and he wanted to make it quite big in scale, and Scott stripped a lot of that back and removed a lot of it, I think, and he kind of held Goldsmith at bay. And I know that you like him, obviously, John, with his work on Star Trek, but I mean, this is the complete opposite.
Oh, that's the best, obviously. Yeah, exactly. Huge and bombastic, and it takes over the film,
And this is him just, he has to take a step back, and I think that was hard for him to do. I mean, watching interviews with him, I think that was hard for him to comprehend, and he wanted to create an emotion, and he wanted to create a feeling, but I think Ridley Scott's already done that in the visual. He doesn't need an extra element of confusion with the music to pull you away from what the visual's doing or the mood that the visual's setting up. I think he's done it so well that you just need something to accompany it, and I don't think Goldsmith was used to doing that. But what he does do is brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jerry Goldsmith wasn't Ridley Scott's first choice as composer. He actually wanted Alien to be scored by a Japanese composer called Isao Tomita, who was a pioneer of electronic space music, but Fox wanted somebody more recognisable. They actually pushed for John Williams. Wow. But Scott agreed to go with Jerry Goldsmith, and it did, I think we all agree, work out pretty well.
Yeah.
It did work out well, but I think we've all been kind of alluding to it. There were quite a few conflicts between Ridley Scott and Jerry Goldsmith about what they wanted to do. They did butt heads throughout, pretty much, because Scott flat out disliked all the kind of extravagant pieces that Goldsmith was putting together, that he wanted to fill the film with these kind of like romantic flourishes that Westy was talking about, because Scott just wanted minimalism. Yeah. He wanted it low key. He wanted just to be almost like under the visuals rather than like on top of them. And Goldsmith did keep pushing and pushing for what he wanted. So Scott got to the point where when you get to the finale of the film, he outright rejected what Goldsmith did and used a piece of music from a guy called Howard Hanson, a piece called Symphony No. 2, and that apparently absolutely infuriated Goldsmith. Furious at him for that.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Goldsmith said, Ridley's a brilliant filmmaker, but he wasn't as articulate then about what the music should do. In other words, it's not my fault.
Yeah.
Another thing that upset Goldsmith as well is that from the scene where they're coming out of the pods at the start, where they're waking up, he said he'd written a beautiful theme then, and 20th Century Fox didn't like it, and the producers went back because they owned a lot of the music that he'd done previously, and he did Freud, so they took one of the soundtracks from Freud and then put it over the top of that, and then when he watched the cut, he's like, what the fuck did you use that for? He's like, I've written a beautiful Scott, you've just used me old stuff, using a different guy. Ridley Scott's telling us how to compose, like absolutely furious. Then you can see like that electronic influence, because Van Gelis is straight in on Blade Runner. Imagine if Van Gelis had scored this, that would have been ridiculous.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, after Alien, Jerry Goldsmith carried on scoring classics and composed for films like Star Trek The Motion Picture, Poltergeist, First Blood, Gremlins, The Burbs, Total Recall, and lots of others. And about Alien, he later said, "Oh, Ridley, we could have got on so well, but we didn't. He didn't like the main theme I wrote, so I rewrote it as the obvious thing, weird and strange, and everybody loved it."
Yeah, said it took him like 30 minutes to do the one that Ridley Scott liked. It took him 6 days to do the first one. He's fucking furious.
Ridley Scott might not have been blown away with how Alien sounded at first, but he's very much a visual director, as we've discussed, and that shows in the final film. His director of photography on Alien was Derek Van Lint, who Scott knew from his advertising days, and Alien was actually his first feature film as DP.
Yeah.
So another inexperienced crew member. Does it show? What do we think of how Alien looks?
I think it looks amazing, but I think that's all down to Ridley Scott as well as Van Lint. Really, I think Van Lint's his right-hand man. Scott's, you can tell from Scott's storyboards how he wants it lit. Even from the storyboards, where the light and the shadow is, he wanted it dark, he wanted it gloomy, he wanted it depressing, he didn't want it to look like Star Wars, he didn't want it to be top lit, he didn't want it to look like 2001, he wanted it to look like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, more or less. Then he uses what they call panic lights, and you've got all the sirens, which are lighting a lot of things, the flamethrowers light a lot of faces, and all these elements are thrown in, and Scott does it so well, and Van Lint's just on the same page. I mean, they knew each other 10 years, they'd worked with commercials with each other for 10 years, so they knew exactly how things were going to work out and how things were going to be done. But I think one of the main things about this film that is often overlooked is that it's shot anamorphic, and this was the first film that Ridley Scott had shot anamorphic, because he shot The Duelist spherical. So what anamorphic does, if nobody knows, I'm not going to bore you to tears, so basically you've got a square negative of film, and what they were doing spherical is shoot the middle of that film. That's where you'd naturally get the top and bottom black bars, which would have your widescreen effect. So what they do with an anamorphic lens is basically there's an element built into the lens that stretches that, so you cover the full square, and then it's ran through projector with the anamorphic element on the projector, and that shrinks it back down. So what you're doing is you're getting all the information on that frame, on the actual negative, and then they shrink it down to fit into that widescreen format, so you get a lot more depth, you get a lot more depth of field, you get a lot more lens flares. I mean, J.J. Abrams loves it. The first 5 Spielberg films were shot anamorphic. All the Raiders of the Lost Ark were all anamorphic. Blade Runner was anamorphic, and you can tell if you see a blue horizontal lens flare in the middle, if all of the bokeh in the background is all oval instead of circular, that's shot anamorphic, and what that does is gives you incredible depth of field, and it gives you like an incredible cinematic look. And don't forget, this was a 2-camera operation, so you had Van Lint on one and you had Ridley Scott on the other. You had 2 guys shooting this whole film. That's incredible.
Holy shit.
This is 2 guys at the top of the game who are best friends, who want to create something that looks fucking incredible.
Yeah. Well, talking about Ridley Scott before, I said his films tend to look big and grand, and while I think that's true here, I'm not sure how he's pulled that off, because the settings are all so confined and small, but I guess it's that anamorphic lens that you're talking about there, Westy, which helps with that.
Yeah.
I know that a lot of the movie was shot handheld, like you mentioned, Westy, and the art director on Alien was called Roger Christian, and he said 80% of Alien was shot on Ridley's shoulder, so Scott did a lot of the camera work himself, which is massively impressive.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just looks incredible. The lighting throughout is sensational, from the big wide shots on the planet and in the egg chamber at the start to the much more claustrophobic feel on the Nostromo. Everything still stands up the day, every single shot for me, and it gives this film, this B-movie concept, just massive credibility based just on how it looks.
Yeah, I mean, Van Lint said that when they shot the final sequence, because they built the whole set around the alien being in that wall, so they built it around him, so he's perfectly camouflaged in there, so the guy in the suit was in there, they built the wall around him, and there's that panic light going off, and there's the flashing lights, and they said they could only shoot it for about, they could do like 5-6 takes, and then everyone would have to stop, because everyone was just getting dizzy and falling over and passing out, because it was just that practical, and that's how they wanted it to look. So the shot under them whole conditions, which you can tell, it's just incredible.
Awesome. And Matt?
Yeah, it's all right, I suppose. Seen worse.
All right, PI.
No, I mean, anyone watching this, any director at the time who had like thoughts of making a science fiction film must have just thought, oh, for fuck's sake. Back to the drawing board. Yeah.
I've just forgot about 2001. Then this comes along. You're like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Must have been so annoying, but yeah, it looks incredible. The thing that strikes me, I think it's cinematography that's designed to work hand in hand with that amazing production design. It's designed to make the Nostromo look really greasy and run down and like in need of serious repair. It makes it look claustrophobic. And I love all the contrast that you do get between the light and the dark in the film, you know, so you go from the med lab in the canteen to like the bowels of the Nostromo and the alien planet. That contrast works really well. And I think for a film that is like, I don't know, like 80% in the dark, I think that darkness is just lit brilliantly because there's so much detail in it.
Yeah.
There's still so much shadow you can pick out, and there's shades to the darkness. So, you know, I would describe this film as darkly lit, but it's not murky. No. I think there's a difference. If it's murky, you can't make out anything, but you can make out everything. In this film, everything that Scott wants you to see, you can see. Have you ever noticed one of the mistakes in the film, like down to the cinematography?
No, go for it.
I'm interested to hear this.
Whether it's cinematography or not,
Okay.
I don't know. But
I'm not going to shout at you.
you know that bit in Aliens when the Marines wake up and James Cameron put a mirror at the end to double the amount of like tubes he had?
Yes.
Yeah.
They did the same here, and they put the mirrors at the end of the tunnel, so it made the tunnels like stretch on really long,
Right.
Because it's obviously the reflection. But if you look at the first scene with Parker and Brett when they go down into the like the lower levels and they're walking towards the camera, you can see their reflection in the back because that's where the mirror was.
Oh, can you? Right, okay.
Away, yeah. So it's just a shame that sneaked in there.
Nah, that was supposed to happen. It was supposed to show how reflective they were about not getting enough money and being
It's about duality.
It's the duality, yeah.
Duality of mankind.
Van Lint had some major problems with achieving what they actually achieved because the sets and corridors had low ceilings, so the lighting had to be set through grills and hidden in walls or use practicals. And I think, like I said, because shooting anamorphic, you're going to see the ceiling, you're going to see the top and bottom, and Van Lint wanted his lights really close to his actors. That's how he always lit things. So he had to use harder lights, and he had to put them into the set and shoot them through grills and everything else. And one thing I did find out when I was researching this is that, you know, the floor of the Nostromo, how it looks like grills.
Yeah.
They just turned over like milk crates painted silver.
Right.
Fucking brilliant.
That's a bit of a classic science fiction trick. I think they often use over to milk crates and stuff, but when it's done well, like, yeah, it just looks fantastic.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, it looks amazing.
There was lots of problems that Scott and Derek Van Lint had to overcome, but they did so pretty expertly. So what's your favourite shot in the film?
Mine is towards the end of the film when Ripley has set the Nostromo to self-destruct, and you get that absolutely sensational close-up of her fingers, and then her face is just pulling herself up the ladder from like the lower level to the upper level, because like the fear in her eyes, it's just bulging out, and it's just like drenched in sweat, and it's picking out every single bead of sweat. It's picking out every single like bit of grease and dirt that's just picked up along the way, and it's just lit so fantastically. And it's like what he's been saying about how they use the light sources. It's from the alarms going off.
Yeah.
It's the one image I would pick out and say that's what Alien is about, because it just completely captures the fear of the film at that time. I think it's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Great, that is a great shot.
Mine is also what Alien is about. It's when they step off the Nostromo and they're on that planet and you actually see that ship for the first time, and it's silhouetted, but it's when they come round and it's that pushing that we spoke about earlier, but you just see them three lights at the bottom, which makes it real. You just see the three helmet lights just at the bottom of the frame, tiny, the right size, and that slow push in, and then there's the sound over the top. It's every element of that really works, and it's a matte painting, and it's a miniature, and it's got these small lights in it that work. And in 1979, I would think, looking at that, well, what planet did they land on to shoot that? Because that looks real.
It does, yeah, you're right. They've got all these different sort of visual effects coming together, and it just looks fantastic, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing.
No huge recognition for Derek Van Lint for Alien, really, and he only worked on 3 features after this one, which were Dragon Slayer, X-Men, and The Spreading Ground.
Yeah.
Bit of a bizarre mix there.
The what? I've heard of that one.
He's most well known for Alien, of course, and before passing away in 2010, Derek Van Lint said about the film, "Ridley's a very talented guy and has always been fun to work with. Since he was involved, I knew from the word go the picture would end up looking nice and it would do me no harm whatsoever to be involved in it." Go on, man, what harm can it do? We've talked about the importance of the design and production work to the success of Alien already, but I think it's worth going into a bit more on the creature itself, don't you?
Of course.
So, quite famously, the fully grown adult xenomorph and facehugger were designed by a pretty unique artist. You know who that is, of course.
Geiger?
Yes, yes.
Geiger?
H.R.
Let's go the
Giger?
whole thing
Giger?
off.
Haven't done that for a while, have I?
So I got Aliens, I think it was last
Yeah, I think it was.
A surrealist Swiss artist known for creating bizarre images of humans and machines, often in a sexualized fashion, and he clearly carried that into his work here. H.R. Giger. So what do we think of the Alien as a piece of design, a movie monster creation?
Unparalleled. Absolutely unparalleled.
Yeah.
I've always loved it since the first moment I saw it. It's just one of them things that is just so original, so terrifying, and at the same time just so majestic and beautiful in its design. It's got this real attractiveness to it, I think, which is a weird
sexy,
thing to
isn't
say.
it?
Well, it's not sexy. I mean, that's
Sexy little beast.
That's ridiculous. Calm down. You wouldn't be looking for the cat if you were Brett. You'd be looking for the alien. Where are you? with your net. But no, it's just got this real. It's just a cinematic marvel. I mean, there's no other place for it than on the big screen. It's a waste anywhere else. It's just a beautifully realised, beautifully designed a meeting of minds. And on the page, yes, fine, you could sketch it and you could talk about it, but to make it look that good, to make it sound that good, move that well, have all of these elements in it, you just believe it. I think getting him involved was absolutely paramount to what this film is.
Yeah.
So without him, it's just nowhere near as powerful, and I think the Alien is the culmination of everything. It's just unbelievable.
I agree. It looks absolutely fantastic. It looked fantastic then. It looks fantastic now. Just as good. Matt, what do you think of it?
Until Giga comes along, they must have been petrified because, like you say, it kind of lives and dies on what this thing looks like, because essentially you're still talking about a guy in a suit.
Yeah.
And it could have just been an absolute waste of everyone's time if they didn't absolutely nail it, which he does. I mean, you name any other famous monster in cinema history, the original King Kong, Frankenstein's monster, the best stuff you get from Ray Harryhausen, and this is still the best thing that's ever been created from someone's imagination and put on screen to just scare you and terrify you. And just the details, which are just terrifying, like the size of its teeth, the fact it's got a mouth within a mouth.
Yeah.
It's the most alien I've ever seen. It's just fantastic. It's something where you just can't praise it enough. You just can't.
Well, Giga got the gig because Dan O'Bannon had worked with him on that Abandoned Dune project I mentioned. O'Bannon was blown away by the design work on that film, and when it was shut down, he basically took the creative team with him to make Alien, including H.R. Giga. And then when Ridley Scott came in, he loved Giga's art book Necronomicon, so kept him on.
I'd say absolutely iconic, but it wasn't an instant idea. It did take a while before we ended up with what we got on screen. So, for example, the facehuggers originally, they were green.
Right.
But then one day, Dan O'Bannon was on set, saw them where they hadn't been painted yet, and just went, no, leave them. Because of that horrible flesh colour, kind of off-white. He said, no, leave them like that. They look absolutely brilliant. So they did. And then once fully grown, they were originally going to be see-through, and that enormous head was actually going to be full of living maggots.
What?
But that got changed. I know. Just reading that out makes me feel ill. But they changed that just because it was just too tricky.
Right.
And then lastly, the originally designed with eyes, but Giger himself, as he went on with the design, he grew to dislike that idea, so he asked them to be taken out.
Yeah, it looks great how it's got no eyes. I mean, you don't even notice that it's got no eyes, really, do you?
No.
I think every one of those changes is definitely for the best. Every single one of them.
Yes, absolutely.
I know that Giga had problems with US Customs as well, so when he shipped over his first designs for the facehugger, customs officials were so alarmed by what they saw that they detained them. So Dan O'Bannon had to go to LAX to convince them they were for a horror movie, and the guy he met described the images as repulsive abortions. Wow. That's graphic, isn't it? You just work at LAX, what are you coming up with that kind of visualization for?
Imagine opening that portfolio and seeing all that shit inside, though. You lock this man up.
Amazing.
We have another Patreon question here as well, specifically on HR Giga. So, Justin Walsh. Hi, Justin.
Hello, mate.
Hello, Justin.
He's asked, in regard to cinema, is there a more influential painter/set designer than Giga?
Influential, probably not, but I think there are some names that are worth mentioning. So I would say Roger Christian for me, who worked on Star Wars and New Hope. When you think of like the interiors he designed for that, you know, the inside of the Death Star, Millennium Falcon, so iconic, and obviously something that still gets used today. I also want to mention Ken Adam, who designed all the Bond films in the 60s and 70s, like particularly You Only Live Twice, which is the one with the volcano lair, which just looks absolutely sensational still. And he also, of course, he did Doctor Strangelove.
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
The War Room
and that. So they're the other names are thrown in the mix, but yeah, this one pretty outstanding and influential.
Yeah, I mean, Giger's Alien was very influential, clearly, and it's been ripped off many times. But the most influential artist in cinema, I think maybe Saul Bass might have something to say about that. He designed lots of iconic posters and title sequences like Vertigo and The Shining, and that style I think is seen more often than Giger's, because Giger's is so original and unique. You could argue Drew Struzan was more influential too. He designed posters for Indiana Jones, The Thing, Back to the Future, loads of classics. There's an Oliver Stone quote on Giger though, where he said, "I do not know anybody else who has so accurately portrayed the soul of modern humanity. A few decades from now, when they talk about the 20th century, they will think of Giger."
Wow.
I mean, if Stone's right and that happens, then yes, in the future we might be saying that he's the most influential artist in cinema. But for now, he's one of the big names, absolutely. But I'm not sure you could call him out and out the most influential, because we've already mentioned there 3 or 4 names that are equally as influential, if not more, I think.
Yeah, I would say the same as you, John, really. I think he's too original to be inspirational, if you know what I mean. You can't replicate what Giger does. That's it. If you want something that looks like what Giger does, that's all he does. You're not going to bring him on to do, you know, My Fair Lady or something. You know, it's just not going to happen. So he's incredible, and, I mean, inspirational from the fact of he's original, and I think you should be as original as Giger should be, and realise your own vision, and I think that as an inspiration, definitely. But I mean, there's the likes of Anton Furst as well, who did the 1989 Batman and redesigned Gotham City. I mean, that was the biggest set built since Cleopatra in '63. Do you know what I mean? It was massive. Wow. It was huge. And he did Full Metal Jacket as well, so he turned London into Vietnam. So, you know, there's these people who, you know, it depends on, it's horses for courses, really. It just depends on their ability and what they are brought on board to do. But I think Giger for this is an inspiration for originality. And you spoke about artists there, John, you know, like Saul Bass, Drew Struzan, amazing. But I would say probably Ridley Scott himself. I mean, his storyboards are worth $4.2 million. So, yeah.
So once Giger designed the Beast, the Star Beast, they had to actually make it. Want to know how they did that?
Yes, please.
So Ridley Scott firstly wanted to use animatronics to create and control the alien to avoid it being a man in a rubber suit, but special effects at the time weren't advanced enough to do that, so it did end up being a man in a rubber suit mostly, and the head was a puppet. So to create that head, there was a team of puppeteers who were able to control the head to move in any direction, and they could also control the alien's lips, its jaw, and its inner mouth that shoots out. The puppet head had over 900 working parts to it. The front part of the alien's head was made from a cast of a real human skull. The slime that drips from the alien's mouth was KY jelly. Very simple, but that just looks fucking awesome, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
And shredded condoms were used to create the tendons on the alien jaws. Tiny touch, but again, I know what they mean, but I didn't know they were condoms, so I might look at that differently now. But when you don't know what they are, they look great. I mean, the whole thing is just some creation. It looks absolutely incredible, and every bit as, for the most part, it looks real, which is the most important thing, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is as well, though, like once they designed it, they've actually got it casted, and there were a number of actors who were up for filling the alien suit, and one of them, famously, Peter Mayhew, did Chewie. Chewie, he was up for this as well. But eventually went to a guy called Balaji Badu, and he was a graphic artist, and he had kind of no real interest in being an actor or anything, but he just happened to be seen in a London pub by one of the casting directors, who approached him, asked him if he'd be interested, if he'd go and meet Ridley Scott, and that's how he got the gig. And then what Ridley Scott did with him, he sent him to mime classes and to Tai Chi classes so he could slow down his movements and like fully kind of how to move that suit.
Mime like Marcel.
Yeah.
Stuck in a glass box.
So because they had no choice to go with the guy in the rubber suit, like Matt mentioned there, Scott had to shoot the alien in very specific ways to make sure it wasn't laughably obvious. The alien only actually has, can you guess how many minutes of screen time?
8 or 9 minutes?
Yeah,
10 minutes maybe.
Surely.
Yeah, 4 minutes of screen time. 4 minutes.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
Absolutely ridiculous. And when it's on screen, the shots of it are very short, like, or it's extreme close-ups, or it's just cutaways, or it's just there, and we don't see it until 1 hour into the film. Also, Scott deliberately never shot the alien facing the camera directly because he thought that made it look more humanoid. I mean, the front of the actual alien was modelled on a human skull, So he shot everything like in a side profile just to give it that bit more of a strange look, which works so well.
Yeah, all those things worked amazingly well, I think, didn't they?
Definitely.
So with the huge production values and design work that went into Alien, we've been through quite a lot of stuff there. The writing, music and cinematography are all essential to the film's success, and the design and effects work around creating the alien itself are still impressive. For the time, extraordinary, surely.
Yeah, unbelievable.
The end.
After Ash is out of the picture, the 3 remaining crew members come up with a new plan. They'd set a self-destruct sequence aboard the Nostromo and leaving a space shuttle, leaving the alien to meet a fiery end on the ship. Ripley boards the shuttle to prep it, while Parker and Lambert head to the supply room to gather life support equipment, but they're not alone. The alien takes its final victims here. Sorry to say, Parker and Lambert go. What do we think of this sequence?
Scariest sequence in the film for me, easily.
Really?
Absolutely. It's the one that just puts me on edge like no other. I like how it kind of flips convention on its head, because it's usually the person who goes off by themselves that gets killed, but here it's not. It's the people who are doubled up, who should be safer. They're the ones who get wiped out. I think the fact that even though Lambert has pretty much been a nightmare to deal with throughout the whole film, and Parker's a bit of a dick, I still do want them to get away, just because the whole film has been so like oppressive and scary. I just want them to get out of there. It's worse for Ripley because she doesn't see what happened. She just has to hear it.
Yeah.
And especially Lambert's scream, the way that gets drawn out.
Yeah.
And she's kind of panting at the same time. And it's just that thought in your head, like, what the fuck is it doing to her? That is just the scariest bit in the film by far for me. Then what we see is just as scary. I mean, it's by far and away the most we see of the alien. The score is ramping up, and this is why so much of the film has been about a slow build, about just building tension up carefully and quietly, because this is just Scott letting loose and just putting it right in your face, full on pure horror. It just absolutely demolishes my nerves pretty much every time I watch this scene. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, similar to you, Matt. Of all the moments in the film, the scene where Parker and Lambert are killed is the one that feels most like a horror movie to me. It's the moment that I dread coming up. It's the classic. After all they've been through, we want them to escape, and they're so close to doing so, but don't quite make it. The tension as they're gathering the supplies, and you know there's a good chance the alien's going to show up, is again just palpable off the screen. And the way Scott lets us know the alien's there is fantastic. Lambert's moving the oxygen tanks and she's spotlighted against the wall. And as she turns away, we see the alien shadow appear right where she's standing, then disappear. That's awesome. It's just heartbreaking for me, intentionally and brilliantly so, the way they both die. Parker's got a clean shot at the alien. He's shouting at Lambert to get out of the way, but she, understandably, is so petrified she can't even move. So Parker takes the alien on in a fist fight, which is a terrible idea, and comes on a distant second best. But what Scott does brilliantly throughout the whole film is that in Kane, Brett, Dallas, Parker and Lambert, 5 people are killed by the alien, but each of those sequences are completely different. I dread this one coming because I just find it all so sad the way they go, but that's Scott's intention, and yet again he directs the whole thing just magnificently. Top level stuff. And Westy?
Yeah, exactly the same as you guys, really. I don't kind of want to repeat anything that you've said, but I always find this sequence always feels a little bit rushed for me when they're just kind of out of there. It's there. It doesn't seem to build as much as I want it to. I know it's the climax of the film and it needs to get there, but I feel Parker just could have had a little bit more to his death. I think he's out of there just a little bit too quickly. I know that fist fight's a little bit ridiculous. I don't know, it could have felt a bit cleverer for me. I think they could have done it in a bit of more of a clever way. It just seems like we've got 2 characters left. We want to get down to Ripley. Let's put them both in the same place. Bang bang. And then we're out, and then we're down to that, the final showdown, which you can then breathe again, and right, okay, we're on to Ripley. So for these 2 characters to die the way they do, it is sad and it is horrific, but I would like to see a little bit more of that.
In that bit, though, when Parker gets killed by the alien, basically like chomping through his skull, they made a fiberglass replica of Cotto's head and they filled it with pig's brains. I mean, is there any part of an animal that hasn't been used at some point in this film? The butchers must have absolutely loved this production.
Made a killing.
Absolutely.
Quite literally. It's where Ridley Scott's 4.2 million went on his storyboards as well, on animal entrails, oysters.
But his forehead as well, that's made of wax, and that's why the teeth looks like it just punches through no problem, because it was actually very brittle.
Right. I mean, again, it just looks great, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Yeah. I know that in the original version of the script, Lambert's death was supposed to be a bit different. I say a bit different, loads different. So originally it was going to be that Parker does try to shoot the alien, but misses and blows a hole in the hull of the ship, which creates a huge vacuum out into space. Then the alien pushes Lambert over that hole and just slowly gets sucked through it. Horrific, that.
They actually do that in Alien Resurrection. Remember that at the end where that weird alien baby thing is sucked out the tiny hole in the hull. It's horrible, and not in a good way. It's just horrible. So I'm glad they didn't do that. There's a moment here as well that's been a bone of contention for some fans over the years. So we don't actually see the alien kill Lambert, but in her final moments we see a shot where the alien tail comes up between her legs. Then when Ripley gets there, we don't see Lambert's whole body, but we do see her naked feet and legs, and they weren't naked before. This implies that the alien didn't just kill Lambert, it sexually assaulted her first. Do you go along with that? How does that sit with you, if you do? Westy, come to you first.
Okay, thanks. come to me with all the easy questions, that's fine. I think my answer to that is I think every single person who dies in this film is sexually assaulted. That's how they die.
Right.
In one way or another, it's there's either a massive phallic tongue going through your skull, which happens to Brett, happens to Parker. Kane is almost raped, and then he's got this unwanted pregnancy and this unwanted birth. So that's due to being, this sexual assault goes all the way through the film for me, and I think that is one of the key elements to it, and part of the horror and part of the body horror that I mentioned earlier on. And I think that's the whole point. And yes, this is probably the most obvious version of that, and I think that's why it sticks in people's minds, and they think that that's the only way, or the only time that it does happen. And people could argue that Dallas doesn't. But there's a deleted scene from the end when Ripley's running back to the shuttle and she comes across a cocooned Brett and Dallas. Brett's dead because of the sexual assault that has happened, and that, that he's being penetrated almost by this phallic tongue, which happens. And then you've got Dallas, and you think, well, that doesn't happen to him, but he's been cocooned, so it's going to start all over again for him. So that will happen, and the circle will start again. So I think everyone in this film is sexually assaulted, and that's how they die.
Yeah, I mean, there's sexual imagery all the way through the film, isn't there? The facehugger fucks Kane's face, as Ronald Shusser put it. The chestburster is very phallic looking when it comes out of Kane's belly. H.R. Giger's design work concepts hinted graphic sexuality all the time. I'm on board with all that, as I think it gives the film this real uniqueness and plays in your subconscious in quite a graphic way. But this suggestion that the alien takes Lambert's clothes off and assaults her is over the line for me, to be honest. Firstly, 5 people are killed by the alien. Only one of them is a woman, and she's the only one who it strips naked. I mean, that's horrific to me, to be honest. The portrayal of gender has been so strong at this point. It's a man who gets impregnated by the facehugger, which is a nice reversal. The supercomputer is called Mother, and Ripley is as strong a lead as you could ever see. Then this just undermines that a bit for me, which is such a shame. Also, in terms of what we've been told, I'm not even sure it makes any narrative sense whatsoever. I mean, we know the life cycle of the alien. They don't have sex to reproduce. So why would the alien have any sexual urges at all? It wasn't even meant to be in there, because that shot we're talking about is Harry Dean Stanton's legs. It was taken from the Brett sequence and shoehorned here just for shock value of where the alien tail moves up. And it's pretty tacky shock value at best for me, to be honest. The only reason the film doesn't lose me at this point is because the rest of it is just ridiculously good. I must say I really strongly dislike those 2 shots of the tail moving up her leg and then of her bare feet. I don't like either of them, to be honest.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of on the fence, I guess. I definitely am in agreement with you, John, in that there's no logical sense to this idea that it does that. It makes no sense to the narrative whatsoever. But as you've both pointed out, there is still so much sexual imagery throughout the film. The facehuggers, the tube down the chest, Ash in the magazine forcing that down Ripley's throat, that it does fit in with that.
Yeah.
It does hark back to a lot of these kind of cheesy 50s science fiction films you get where aliens were kidnapping Earth women and things like that, but obviously this is done in a much more horrific and intense and graphic way, so it definitely fits the thematic concerns that you've got in the film. It just doesn't make much narrative sense to me. And then in terms of how it makes me feel really horrible, which is where I think I'm definitely with you on this, John. It's just...
Well, I'm not saying it doesn't make us feel bad. I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy it.
You said you wanted to see more.
About it. Just because I mentioned the spaceship looking like open legs, that's not my... I haven't recovered from that. But it does.
Yeah, it does. It makes me feel really uncomfortable, and I do think if this film was made today, you wouldn't get that shot.
I agree.
Yeah, so I agree with that, yeah.
So, a problematic sequence in some ways, maybe, but that aside, the deaths of Parker and Lambert are thrilling and heartbreaking in equal measure.
Yep.
At this point, Kane, Brett, Dallas, Ash, Parker, and Lambert have all left us, and we're left with the showdown we've been waiting for: Ripley and the Xenomorph. Ripley sets a self-destruct sequence, boards a narcissist, watches the Nostromo blow up, and thinks she's made it until she finds she has a stowaway aboard the shuttle. A stowaway with acid for blood. She blows out the goddamn airlock. Is it a fitting ending to what came before, Matt?
In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. I think for me.
Yeah, we'll go.
Well,
what I
like about it, first of all, is Ripley's ingenuity here. You know, she's trapped in the most confined space she could be in now, just in this little support shuttle. Literally no way out. I mean, the Nostromo was bad enough trying to find a way out of there. Here, absolutely no way out for her. And what's great is because she's got no one to play off with or play off against. She can't explain what her plan is. You're just sitting there thinking, right, why she's strapping herself into the spacesuit, why she's strapping herself into the console, into the seat now, and what she's doing with the grappling hook. So I love all that stuff. And then her actual plan, you know, it makes complete perfect sense. And I love how that's just Ripley thinking on her feet. The bit that doesn't quite work for me is it's a little bit like Westy's like criticism of the Parker and Lambert scene. I just want a little bit more from this scene. I want something a bit more creative. I just feel this is the scene where I think Ridley Scott, he's kind of run out of ideas of how to film the alien. I just feel we've seen this close up a fair few times now. I just want to see it done in a slightly different way. The scene itself is fine. Weaver sells the hell out of it, but it just lacks a bit of oomph for me at the end. I just want a bit more punch for this final climax. And I just don't get it. I get a guy in a suit bouncing around on the end of a rope. I just wonder if Ridley Scott looks back at this and thinks, if I'd had one more day,
yeah,
could
maybe
have done something really great with that. I just feel it runs out of steam a little bit in terms of what he can do with the alien here.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think it's still an iconic climax of the film. And I do think it's great. No huge spectacle or bombast. It's all very slow, pretty subtle. And again, I think it's really well directed for the most part. The bit when the alien reveals itself, even now, when I know the alien's there in the bulkhead, I still can't see it until its hand shoots out. Yeah. It's great. I like when Ripley's putting on the spacesuit and she's singing "You Are My Lucky Star." Yeah. That was improvised on set by Sigourney Weaver. In the studio were furious that Scott kept it in because they hadn't budgeted to pay for music rights. But I'm glad they did keep it in because I think it's great.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah,
the effects work, like you sort of mentioned, Matt, when the alien's been harpooned and is dangling outside the ship, hasn't aged well. And I'm not sure how it bears the full brunt of the shuttle's rocket engines and is totally unscathed. But those final seconds where Ripley delivers the iconic monologue when recording the ship's log, "This is Ripley, last surviving member of the Nostromo, signing off." That's just a fantastic way to end things for me.
That was the audition piece, wasn't it? That's what they all had to say. That's what they got the
really?
on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And what do you think of the final sequence, Westy?
I mean, it's amazing when you watch this again, and I watched Aliens, and Aliens for me was burned into my mind, and then I watched this over and over and over again in preparation for this, and I just realised there's so much in this film that's being taken and then sped up, fast forwarded, and you're just blown up into what Aliens is, and this whole ending is the blueprint to the ending of Aliens, really. I mean, it's exactly the same. It's pretty much spot on. It's, scene for scene, but it's just a little bit more intense, bigger explosions, drop ships coming in and out, but the whole theme is pretty much the same, and the bit that does let it down is, like Matt said, when it's just dangling outside the ship, it does look a bit shit. But apart from that, I mean, it's because they built the set around the alien being stuck in there. I mean, he tried to climb out 3 or 4 times and ended up ripping the suit every time because they built that far into it. I mean, that level of detail is incredible, and then you just have this kind of floating. It's just the threat's kind of gone by then.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It should be kind of clambering on the side and then scuttering around the ship, and it should be like trying to get it off in certain ways, and the ship should be tilting, and it should have that kind of element to it to completely finish off the standard of the whole film. The standard does kind of drop at the end, but for me, I mean, it doesn't drop that far. It's still fucking incredible, and for her to have that whole sequence where she is singing that, for me, is just so hold your breath. Every time I watch it, I'm just, and the way she sings it, and she's just lucky.
She's terrified.
Herself just lucky. Yeah, but she's lucky getting into that, and I kind of read it both ways. She's singing the song to calm herself down, but she's telling herself that she's lucky to get this far. So for me, yeah, it's a great ending to the film, and I love the fact that she does end up, sleeping, and you do get a happy ending. But if it was me and I'd been through that trauma, I wouldn't just go straight to sleep. I'd be sitting there shaking, just looking around. There must be another one. Is there another one in here? Just like, I'll take the cat around on a little lead, just pointing it in the corner, see if it hisses anywhere.
Yeah, definitely.
But it does work. It works fantastically, and it's a wonderful end to a wonderful film.
Lovely.
Yeah, I mean, to pick up on Westy said there about Balaji Badu, and he ripped his suit a few times. There's one outtake from this I would have loved to have seen it. It's when he clambers out. He didn't rip the suit on this occasion, but he stands up in front of Ripley, and the tail fell off. Can you imagine Ridley Scott's face when that happened? That would have been absolutely amazing to see.
It would have been in close-up anyway. You wouldn't have seen it.
Yeah, good point, yeah.
Yeah, the alien is moving so slowly at this point. It's great because even though it's not explained in the film, the point is that the alien's dying at this point. It's fulfilled its role in the life cycle of the alien. It's gone into the shuttle to die, not to hide. So that's why it's so slow to attack Ripley. That's what the point of it is, yeah.
Right.
Okay. Never knew that.
So we've praised the ending where Ripley blows the alien out into space, but Ridley Scott actually did not get the ending that he wanted at the time. What he wanted was very bizarre. Have you heard about this?
Yes, I have, yes. It's so weird.
Yeah, it is.
Well, for anyone that's not, what was going to happen was Ripley harpoons the alien, but it makes no difference. It runs towards her, slams through her mask, and rips her head off. It would then sit in the chair and, in Captain Dallas's voice, say, "I'm signing off. Hopefully the network will pick me up."
With a cigar?
Really weird. Do you like that?
No. I'd have been furious if that was the ending.
Well, thankfully, Fox didn't like it either. Hearing what Scott had planned, the studio executive arrived on set and told Scott he'd be fired on the spot unless he filmed an ending where the alien dies. And Scott himself later admitted that how the film ends is definitely for the best.
Yeah. When has Ridley Scott ever done anything as weird as that in a film before?
Never. That's just awful.
Where did that come from? Jesus
All
Christ.
of Kingdom of Heaven. And one final thing, if you watch the end credits until the very, very end, the final thing you hear, you've got to turn it right up. It's better if you turn it right up. And the final thing you hear as the final credits roll up is the sound of an alien egg opening, which is a really nice touch.
Classic. Oh, nice. Lovely Easter egg. Easter alien egg. Yeah. The most famous and iconic moments from Alien probably come in the first hour, but that's not to say the rest is a letdown, far from it. And in those two final sequences, Parker and Lambert meeting their fate, followed by the Ripley alien showdown, the film ends pretty brilliantly, I think.
Absolutely.
Reception and awards.
Alien is an iconic science fiction horror classic nowadays, but what about how it did back in 1979? The final budget for Alien ended up being $11 million, and it grossed $106.3 million at the box office.
Wow.
A big return, but maybe not what you'd expect going off the status the film now has.
I thought it would have been more.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised at that.
Yeah.
I've got some of the critical response to the film here too. So, Roger Ebert, did Rog like Alien, do you think?
Of course he fucking doesn't like anything.
He did. 4 stars out of 4. And he said, Ridley Scott's movie is a great original. One of the great strengths of Alien is its pacing. It takes its time. It waits. It allows silences. It vibrates with a dark and frightening intensity. And Sigourney Weaver is going to be a major star.
Called that right.
Not wrong.
Called that right, left, right and centre.
Yeah, I'll take that back.
Pauline Kael, I think Pauline liked it. She said,
"Oh, here we go. Typical Kael review. No one knows what the fuck she meant."
It reaches out, grabs you and squeezes your stomach. It's more gripping than entertaining because it makes you feel like you've been brutalised.
Thanks for that, Pauline.
Was that it?
That's it, brutalised. However, Time Out were not so kind. And they said, Alien is an empty bag of tricks whose production values and expensive trickery cannot disguise imaginative poverty.
Wow.
Ludicrous.
Okay.
Ludicrous.
I don't understand that. Really.
Today on Rotten Tomatoes, Alien has 98% from critics and 94% from audiences, humongous scores. Yeah. And on IMDb, it has 8.4 out of 10, which is also massive. It sits 52nd in the IMDb all-time list. Bizarrely enough, it's sandwiched between Rear Window above it and Apocalypse Now below it, which were our last 2 episodes.
Oh, there you go. That's not the blueprint, by the way. We don't just go back on TV's like, let's do that one.
Yeah, it wouldn't be so bizarre if that was the case, would it?
No, exactly.
At the Oscars, Alien won one and was nominated for one. It was nominated for Best Art Direction, but lost out to All That Jazz, and it won for Best Visual Effects. It beat out 1941 and Star Trek The Motion Picture, which I'm furious about.
Well, I'm sure you are.
No one else is, John.
Alien is the right winner, you're right.
Yeah.
So, Alien is regarded as a true classic nowadays. The reception at the time didn't totally reflect the status it currently has, but it was a big hit and was the launch pad for the careers of Ridley Scott and Sigourney Weaver and the rest of the Alien franchise.
Indeed.
Sequels and influence.
At this stage recently, I've found myself saying things like no sequels for Shawshank or no sequels for The Departed. Not so with Alien, of course. Since Ridley Scott's film in 1979, there have been a further 7 Alien movies. We're not going to talk about all of them because we did so on our Aliens episode, and I think most people agree that most of them are totally shit. But we are going to answer a Patreon question on the other good Alien film that we've mentioned a bit already. So, George Anderson. Hi, George.
Hi, George.
Hi, George.
And Deanne Jones, actually. Hello, Deanne.
How Deanne?
They both asked the same question.
Oh, I thought they were working together in cahoots.
No, they don't come as a pair, I don't think.
All right. Butch Cassidy and Sundance.
Which is your favourite, Alien or Aliens?
Oh, fucking Sophie's choice. Depends what mood I'm in. This is a terrible question. It's an amazing question, but it's terrible to answer. I saw Aliens first, and I love Alien now that I've seen it, and I could really appreciate what's gone into making it. But then again, I really appreciate what's gone into making Aliens. I'm going to answer it in like the most scapegoat way I possibly can and say it's probably the perfect double bill of all time.
Lovely. The best one too.
Yeah, best one too you can possibly sit through.
It's an easier one for me to answer, to be honest. It's Aliens, no contest.
Well, of course it is.
And that's not a criticism in any way of Alien, but Aliens is possibly my favourite film ever. George and Deanne could have said, what's your favourite any film ever, or Aliens, and I would have still said Aliens probably. It's all covered on our Aliens podcast, so I won't go into great detail, but James Cameron's work on that film is incredible for me. He changes genre from horror, thriller to action for the better, in my opinion. He develops the world and the idea, and he introduces the alien queen, again for the better for me. And the writing in general, but specifically around the character of Ripley, is just unbelievable. And Sigourney Weaver obviously nails the writing to the wall. She's incredible. The budget for the film is relatively small, and what Cameron does with it is nothing less than phenomenal in my eyes. As a story, as a narrative, it's an absolute roller coaster ride. Not that Alien isn't, but I think there are maybe some imperfections in Alien which we've covered. There's none in Aliens for me.
I think people come back, like the Alien purists could come back and say, well, without Alien, you can't have Aliens. But then...
Yeah.
They've tried again. Without Alien, you can't have Alien 3. They've tried again, and nobody's done anywhere near as good as Cameron.
And Matt, which is your favourite?
Yeah, I'm with you, John. It is a fairly easy answer for me, and it is Aliens, because Aliens, for me, it's a film for all kind of moods. You know, I've got the lads coming around, we're going to have a few beers, what should we put on? Let's watch Aliens. When my son was growing up and he was getting old enough to watch slightly older stuff, Aliens was one of the first films I let him watch. Took a while longer before I let him watch Alien.
On a date? Have you watched it on a date before? I've watched it on a date before.
No, I haven't actually.
She loved it. Do it.
What about the film though?
I didn't watch it. Didn't finish it.
Too much sexual threat in the first one. There's not a sexual threat in the second one. Perfect date movie.
Yeah.
If I've had a shit day and I want cheering up, yeah, Aliens, that's absolutely going to lift my mood every time, and there's so many aspects to it that I don't necessarily get out of Alien. Like, if I want to get myself psyched up for anything, I'll just stick on Bishop's Countdown in the background, like just 2 minutes of that, and I'm ready for anything. It's absolutely amazing. There's nothing quite like that in Alien. And when we take notes for these, as obviously we all do, Alien does feel a little bit like homework. Whereas, like, obviously I wasn't on the Aliens podcast, but I don't think I could have taken notes for Aliens because I just would have ended up watching the film. And it was a little bit easier to take myself out of that and watch Aliens. So for those reasons, yeah, it is Aliens for me, but it's not really a criticism of how good Alien is.
Nobody agrees it's the greatest double bill of all time. I completely just by myself with that.
Oh, no, it is, yeah.
The greatest one too, better than the Star Wars one too?
Yeah, you need Jedi, man.
Yeah, fair enough. The end of Aliens is like a resolution, isn't it? It's resolved.
Yeah.
Or it should have been anyway.
And just the way that Aliens just takes the concept and just alters it so slightly but so brilliantly.
Yeah.
And it gets two totally different moods. It's just amazing.
Alien was so good and so successful that it spawned an entire franchise of movies. Most of us actually prefer the sequel, but I think for all of us that shouldn't be taken as a slight on what Ridley Scott achieved here.
No, not at all.
Nope.
All the right movies ranking.
Massive scores everywhere for Alien if we just went through, but how about the All the Right Movies leaderboard?
How about it?
Yeah, let's find out. Let's start with you, Matt. Your summary and rating for Alien, please.
Alien, there's so much to love about this film and there's so many reasons to respect it. It's the film that announced Ridley Scott as the talent that he is, and as average as some of his output is, this is still a film that you've just got to respect him for the way he pulled it together, the way he oversaw everything, the way he visualised this. That's incredible. It changed science fiction forever as a genre, and any film that can change a genre like that, you know, how can you not love that? And the way that it then blends that with horror, that's incredible. It did it in a way that had never been seen before, and it's been imitated so many times since, but very, very rarely as effectively as it is here. The design is incredible, the monster is iconic, and you've got the beginnings of one of the most iconic characters in cinema history. So there's so much to love about it. But there are the little elements that don't work for me. I mentioned some of the dialogue's a bit iffy. Lambert's fate, I'm not really comfortable with, and not in the way that the film makes me want to be uncomfortable with it. And like I said, I just want that ending to pack a bit more of a punch than it does. It just doesn't quite stick the landing as effectively as I think it could and as I think it should. And ultimately, I do have to put this one into the context of how I would rate it alongside Aliens. And that is my favourite. So it's massive for a reason. It's a 9.
9, big score. Well, I said at the start of the episode that I was disappointed with Alien the first time I saw it. Needless to say, I'm not disappointed with it anymore. Top to bottom, back to front, this is top class. Not just science fiction or horror movie making, but filmmaking in general. The concept of the alien itself from Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett is sensational. The execution of that concept in H.R. Giger's design work is sensational. Ridley Scott realising the whole thing on the screen as beautifully and suspensefully as he does is great work. And Sigourney Weaver creating one of the most iconic lead characters, male or female, in pretty much her debut performance shouldn't be possible, but she did it. It's a near perfect film in my eyes, except, as we talked about, how they handle Lambert's death. And what for me is a really distasteful decision to make it look like the alien took her clothes off and sexually assaulted her. I know it was the 70s, but I just cannot forgive that decision, to be honest. And it leaps out at me every time I watch the film, and that's lost the film an entire point. So I'm also going to give it a 9 out of 10. And Westy, what are you going to go for?
I mean, I do love this film. I do love the aesthetic. I love how beautifully shot it is. I love how confident it is. I love how inspirational it is. I love how the fact that it was just 2 guys, 2 cameras. I know there was an army of people behind them, and the set builds are just incredible, and the concepts are just incredible, and the ideas behind it are just incredible. I don't think there's been anything as original as this since, and I don't think it can be bettered. I think it's tried to be bettered, and it has been slightly with Aliens because they had to take it to a completely different place. But if you try and make this again and try and create this intensity and try and create something this good from, you know, the ideas that they had, I don't really think it's possible. It's just a marvel of filmmaking. It's a marvel of cinema. It's up there and it should be applauded as much as it has been applauded. I think Ridley Scott's done an incredible job on it. And like I said earlier, I mean, the work on this is good enough to sustain a career of 40 years. That's how good this film is. It's an absolute marvel. But there are bits of it that just jar us a little bit and have dated a little bit. And the 2 things are, in its relation to the alien, it's when the chestburster comes out and it scuttles across the table. That always pulls me out a little bit. And then when it's hanging underneath the ship and it looks a little bit dated, that jars us a little bit. And like both of you guys have said, the way that Lambert's death is handled is a little bit too on the nose. I think it's really clever in every other aspect apart from that. It is in bad taste, and I think because of the time that has aged a little bit. But that it's not enough to knock a whole point off for me. That's enough to just niggle, and I think it is a film, and we've got to give it the credit where credit's due. And I'm not going to bring something down because of 1 or 2 things, but it does lose half a point because of them 3 little niggles that it's got. So it's a 9.5 for me.
9.5, big score again. As we always do, we also asked our Twitter followers to vote some of their comments. Ricky Keeley at Rickster Scale, who's one of our patrons, said, Ridley Scott has made plenty of great sci-fi films, but is Alien his best? Pretty much flawless, even if some of the chestburster effects look a tiny bit dated now, but that's being mega picky. Overall, it's a 9 out of 10 for me. Iconic filmmaking.
Yep, it is.
Carson Purifoy at Carson Purifoy said, stands the test of time, so I gave it a 9. He's a pony, doesn't know it. That's Carson. And Haddaz at Haddaz 2020 said, how on earth can anyone rate this movie less than a 10? It's aesthetically perfect, the acting is sublime, it's full of shocks and twists, there's a groundbreaking female lead, without it you wouldn't have Aliens, and it has not aged one bit. It's flawless.
Big fan.
Well, we'll put a few flaws in there if you want to revisit that.
See what you think of our flaws there, Haddaz. Let us know. And our Twitter followers rated the film as, what do you think, out of 10?
It's like 9.5.
Yeah, I'd say 9.5 as well.
Yeah.
9.5 is correct.
All right.
It came within a whisker of a 10, actually. Outscored some massive films. Outscored Pulp Fiction, The Shining, The Exorcist, Apocalypse Now. Did really well, yeah.
Did it? The Shining. Disagree with that.
So that gives Alien 37 out of 40 in total. You can check our website for the full ranking table. And that's that on Alien. Hopefully you haven't heard enough and you're going to pull the plug. Join us again in 2 weeks for another classic episode installment. If you're talking about bum cakes, Matt, Luke and PI have got them as they talk Big Bottoms and Rob Reiner, bringing you the story behind classic comedy. This is Spinal Tap.
Yes.
That'll be a laugh riot, right, Matt?
Yep. PI is like a kid on Christmas morning. Looking forward to getting stuck into that. We're going to get stuck in some very different alien pods, put it that way.
And a mention for all of our Director's Chair level patrons as well. I'm handing over to Westy this time. Is that all right, Westy?
God. Yeah.
Nope.
All right. There's quite a few of you guys now, so I'll try my best to do this in a really professional way, but I can't read very well, so that's a flaw on my part. So here we go. Patrons are Adam Cowie, Adam Yates, Andrea Barker Syed, Anna Randall, Anthony Hodgson, Benjamin Rogers, Brandon Galvin, Brio De Paris, Cags Clough, Carlos Conceição, Craig Bourne, Caroline and Paul Williamson, Damien Lennox, Daniel Ryan, Darryl Clough, David Coates, Deanne Jones, Derek Noonan, George Anderson, George Elliott, Graham Chater, Henning Pierzunker, Ian Chappell, James Asview, Jamie Russell, Jonah Howie, Just Joe, Justin Fellas, Justin Walsh, Kareem Halliwell, Kenny Morrison, Matt Lum, Mike Riley, Mr. Paul Devine, Richard Cordish, Robbie D, Sean Campbell, Sharif Ahmed, Hilton Thompson and Maxime Shearer.
Lovely. Thank you, Westy.
Yeah, you're welcome.
To find out more about becoming a patron, accessing our archive, bonus episode and supporting us in what we do, please visit patreon.com/alltherightmovies. You can also subscribe, rate and review us on iTunes and Apple Podcasts. And socially, you can keep up with All the Right Movies on Twitter, which is @right_movies, Instagram, which is @all_the_right_movies, and you can find our movie group on Facebook to join in with all the movie chat and fun that takes place on there.
Oh, yes.
And our website is alltherightmovies.com. We're all off now to see if we can remove this huge 8-legged parasite from Matt's face. Looks innocent enough.
Poor Matt. I'll take responsibility. Get that damn thing off.
So thanks for listening, everybody, and please come back next time.
See you later, folks. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys.